Okay, good evening. This is the Tuesday, April 28th Board of Mayor and Alderman work session. I want to welcome everybody. We're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Caesar.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor's present. Everybody's here. Next is an opportunity for citizens to make comments. I don't have any speaker cards for that, so we'll roll right into item 1 with some explanation. Is a presentation of a housing study by the Williamson County that was done by the Williamson County Association of Realtors and Bowen National Research. We got a little bit of a technical problem, so if the board will hold their questions till the end of the presentation. Apparently there's an issue with the microphone, and after the presentation with your questions, we'll just go around and you'll ask your question. Our illustrious host will then repeat the question. Recorder will repeat the question so that our presenter can hear.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
I'm going to turn it over to Patrick and Bo here in just a moment. But like the mayor mentioned, we are having a little bit of an issue with mics and if anyone speaks and Patrick and Bo hearing us. So we'll wait till those questions at the end, and then I will be down here and Sarah's going to help us with those mics so that we can still record everything and have everything so that everyone can hear us. So right now I'm going to pass it over to Bo, who's going to do an introduction of Patrick.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Alderman. My name is Bo Patton. I'm the CEO of the Williamson County Association of Realtors. It's an honor to join you all via Zoom tonight. It's an honor to be able to present this study to you all tonight. Just a really quick how we got here. I know most of you know this, but just to recap, it was the association is grateful to be part of the Franklin Housing Commission. We have a seat on that, thanks to you all. I sit on that seat, and it really was being part of that group and conversations with many of you that we realize as an organization that a comprehensive housing needs assessment for the city of Franklin hasn't been done in nearly a decade. And as our city and our county is so rapidly growing, and you all have some decisions to make on shaping the future of Franklin housing, we wanted to try to find a way to be a partner with you all. And so utilizing resources to us through the National Association of Realtors and partnering with our friends at Williamson Inc. and some other community stakeholders to gather input on what this study should look like, we reached out to Patrick Bowen National Research, and he has spent the better part of last year compiling this study. He's going to present that for you all tonight. But before I kick it over to him, I want to thank you, Mayor. I want to thank you, Alderman, for us being a partner in this. And I'd really be remiss if I didn't recognize two of our special aldermen. That's Greg Caesar and Jason Potts. Of course, Jason is the liaison to the Housing Commission, and Greg, I think you and I had our first meeting about this almost a year ago when we sat and had coffee. And so I want to thank the two of you all for being instrumental in helping us get this started, and thank all of you all, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We want to be a partner. We want to help you all as you all navigate these new times that we're experiencing. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to present the findings of his study.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me do this. I had the opportunity to do this a little bit earlier with the city staff, and I went way over my allotted time here. So I'm going to see if I can speed this up a little bit. If somebody can give me a quick shout out that you can see that, and
We can see it.
very good. Thank you. And
Worked.
there we go. All right. Well, again, I want to get this done in a timely manner, so I'll jump into this quickly, and then certainly leave time at the end for any questions you might have. So here is the scope of the work that we did. The focus was on Franklin itself, and so you'll see in the tables and graphs subsequent to this references to PSA, that means primary study area, which is Franklin. So if you see that, I don't say it, PSA or primary study area is Franklin. And then one of the things we did was we compared you with the rest of the county. So we have what we call this SSA or secondary study areas. If you see that, that's basically the balance of Williamson County. So it's everything excluding Franklin. And we wanted to understand how Franklin compares to the rest of the county, whether it's demographics, economic, or housing, just to understand like how one might affect the other, and vice versa. So you'll see that throughout this presentation and within the study itself. We had a lot of demographic information, economic information. We had a pretty robust inventory of your local housing stock, whether it was rental or for sale. We looked at transportation and its relationship to your existing housing and some of the potential sites you have, which is what I reference here, development opportunity locations. That just means sites, whether it's vacant parcels or existing buildings that are maybe underused or not, or vacant. So we have information on that. We looked at development costs, residential development costs, and some of your regulatory barriers that might exist that impact housing. We looked at potential developers and investors. I won't show that list in here for this presentation, but know that we have, I think, more than 60 different developers and investors. Same thing for housing programs. We looked at a lot of different housing programs that can be leveraged and explored that might assist in the area. So again, I think we have over 60 of those. I won't present those or show those tonight, but those are in the study. We also had a pretty good employer and stakeholder survey, so some of you all may have participated in the stakeholder survey. I won't have a slide for that, but if time permitting, I do want to talk a little bit about what we found out in those surveys, because they were pretty telling. And then at the end, I do have where we quantify the rental gaps and the for sale housing gaps, and we do that by different affordability levels. So that's the scope of the work. Again, not all of this is going to be presented here tonight, but you can certainly ask me questions on any of these items if time permits. So we have a lot of population information in the report, so population by education level and marital status, poverty level, all those kind of things. What I'm going to focus on here tonight is households, meaning people that live in a housing unit. So a single person living by themselves, that's a household. 5 people living in a house or an apartment, that is a household. And we focus in on households because households tell the story of demand for potential housing opportunities and things like that. So I have a few slides on households. This is kind of the standard stuff in the beginning. It's household growth from 2010 projected out to 2030. And you all know this, you've been growing quite a bit in terms of households. You're projected to add more, about 3,500 additional households. This is just Franklin in itself. So you expect to add about 3,500 households from 2025 to 2030. So that in itself is going to create a demand for additional housing units. But there are other things, and I'll show you other things that contribute to housing needs within Franklin itself. This is just showing total households on the left-hand side and over periods of time on the right-hand side. One of the things I did want to point out, again, you know this, but I got to point out because it is a little bit different, and that is, as I said before, Franklin, which is that top row. If you look on the far right-hand side, again, I said you're going to add about 3,500 households. What's a little bit different for you all is the growth that's expected in the surrounding county. You're going to add about another 6,800 households, even a little bit of a faster growth rate than Franklin in the balance of the county. Mm-hmm. And so you have these two factors playing out, where you've got all this household growth in your city, which we see that in other cities. What I don't see is growth at this level in areas that surround a particular city that we're studying. And so you've got this growth that's affecting the county as a whole, but it's certainly these areas outside of Franklin are going to add pressures to the housing market that as you build housing or housing becomes available for whatever reason, you're going to have some of these households in the outside portions or areas outside of Franklin in the balance of county that are going to contribute to your housing needs. And I'll show you data on the existing housing stock, both inside Franklin as well as in the rest of the county. And you'll see some of the housing challenges you face, or at least the Franklin faces, it's the same kind of challenges that the rest of the county is facing. But nonetheless, household growth, faster rate than what's happening in Tennessee. This is household growth by different age cohorts. So younger households on the top, older households on the bottom. The dark blue is Franklin's numbers. That royal blue would be the balance of the county. So you can see where most of your growth, although you have it in just about every household age segment, in fact, it's every household age segment, but most of your growth is in that age 45 to 54 group, and then basically anything of 65 and older. But most notably, look how much growth you're going to have in that age 75 and older from 2025 to 2030, about another 1,100 households. Now, some of those will be people there that are already in the county that are aging in place, but some of that certainly are people that's relocating, people that want to retire in Franklin. And so you have these changes and growth specifically among these age groups. That's going to drive certain kind of need for particular housing product types. And keep that senior growth number in mind, because I'll show you a little bit later your senior housing stock and what's happening there. And then as you can see here, all that growth expected for households age 75 and older. All right, this is renter households by income levels in the top graph. So lower incomes on the top, higher incomes at the bottom. City of Franklin's in the dark blue. And again, the balance of counties in that royal blue. Where is all of your expected growth? For renter households, it's those that make $75,000 or more a year. Most of that really over $100,000. And maybe more noticeably, it's those households that make over $150,000 a year. So you've got a lot of higher income renter households. That's where a lot of your growth is going to be. And that's where certain rental product is going to have to be built to keep up with the needs and demands of these moderate to higher income households. With that said, even though you've got some minor declines in those lower income households, I'll show you what's available to them. And in just a few slides, I'll show you some of the housing challenges that people face in terms of affordability. So yes, you have a decline in lower income renter households projected over this 5-year period, but you do need housing that's going to meet the needs of this base of households. This is the change in renter households by size. So again, smaller households on top, larger households on bottom, cities in the dark blue, balance of counties in the royal blue. So most of your growth is going to occur in those 1 and 2 person households in the city. But even the county is going to have a lot of growth in those 2 person households. So this leads to the likelihood you're going to need smaller units. That does not mean that you don't need 3 bedrooms or larger, but certainly as the city and the county move forward with rental housing, probably smaller unit types will be in much more demand as household sizes are much smaller, or at least anticipated to be smaller than they were maybe historically. And in part is because we've got aging seniors that the kids are moving out of the house, and younger households aren't really having kids the way they used to. So that's driving a lot of this. And then these next 3 slides, it's the same stuff, but now it's just for owners. So where's all the owner household growth going to be up through 2030? Most of it over $100,000, with much of that, vast majority of owner household growth by income of those that make $150,000 or more. So I know that y'all have had and sold a lot of higher priced homes. I'm going to show you what that looks like. And a lot of the inventory you have is higher income or higher priced for sale housing that's available to purchase. You're going to need that as the years pass, because you've got all this growth expected among the very high income households, both in the city but also the balance of the county. And like before, this is owner households by size. Where's the growth going to be? Dark blue is again Franklin. It's going to be in those 1 and 2 person households. Significantly big growth among 2 person households in the balance of county in that royal blue. So again, this is leading towards smaller household sizes or smaller housing units, particularly in Franklin. But again, it doesn't mean you don't need 3 bedrooms or larger. You will, especially with a lot of these higher income households that are going to that'll have the incomes to buy bigger homes. But you certainly are going to have this growth in these smaller household sizes. So I suspect there's going to be a need for smaller units, probably condominiums to allow some people seniors to downsize into that are ready to do that. But even some of the younger people, the millennials and so forth, that again aren't having kids, and it's either a 1 or 2 person household, they're going to need smaller units. So I can see that as a segment of the market that's going to need to be addressed. All right, so I mentioned before that you have this projected decline among lower income or renter households in particular, and to some degree owner households as well. So I show you 2 things on this table. So in that red box is housing cost burden households. It's a federal definition. That means people that pay over 30% of their income towards their housing costs. They put the definition here at the bottom in red. So you have about 10,000 of those in Franklin. This is considered an excessive amount. It's too much. It's not, a healthy amount to be paid when you pay over 30% of your income towards your housing cost. About 5,700 of those are renters, 4,800 are owners. But here's the bigger story that people probably are not aware of, and this is the severe cost burden household. So these are people that pay, the definition at the bottom, pay over half of their income towards their housing cost. About 2,500 renters, almost 2,000 homeowners, almost 4,500 combined. So you have a lot of people that are paying over half their income, and this is relevant if you think of housing in terms of what does it mean for economics, because these people pay an excessive amount, in this case over 50% of their income towards their housing costs. That's just less for them to pay for other essentials, such as healthcare or transportation, things like that. But it's also less income, less disposable income they have to spend at your stores, your different retailers, restaurants, and things like that. So there's certainly an economic strain on a lot of people. So when we talk about the decline in renter households, lower income renter households, you still have a lot of these people that are really struggling financially to be able to make ends meet. And again, that's the Franklin numbers on the top. You have almost 4,500 of these. So a lot of folks struggling financially with their housing cost. All right, this is probably an important one too in terms of trying to understand the workers, the workforce, and housing. So that map on the left-hand side with those green different arrows, you have about 76,000 people commuting into Franklin every day. And I suspect some of you probably didn't realize the number was that big. You only have about 11,000, almost 500 workers that both live and work in Franklin. And then you got another 27,000 that commute out. The thing I want folks to focus on is that 76,000 that commute into Franklin. So these are a lot of people that are coming in. They work in your area, they're earning their income in your area, but they don't stay. And they'll spend some money for lunch or gas or running some basic errands. But most of the income they earn, they're taking it back out of the Franklin area. And while there's many reasons somebody would choose to live in or not to live in a community such as Franklin, one of the things you'll see here in a few minutes is what do you have available to rent, or what do you have available to buy, and in some cases it's very limited depending on what segment we look at. But there's a good probability that a lot of these commuters would move into the area if you had adequate housing. Nonetheless, the story is they're taking those earnings outside and they're spending it elsewhere. So a lot of those money that local businesses are paying out to workers don't stay within the city of Franklin, and that's an important thing to understand. The other thing to mention is you've got about 14,000 people that commute into the county every day. Into Franklin every day that travel more than 50 miles in each direction. So that map on the right with all the purple on it, the darker the purple is the greater concentration of where these people are coming from. Some are coming obviously from the other parts of Williamson County, but a lot of them are coming from outside the area, whether it's over near Murfreesboro or somewhere up in Davidson County or Maury County, places like that. So you do have a lot of people coming in from the region, but again, a lot of them don't stay and live in Franklin. So important thing to understand in terms of economics and housing. This is the multifamily rental supply. So this is where we surveyed multifamily apartments. We surveyed 43 of them. That's where our staff actually called and or went into properties to talk to these property managers and leasing agents. So over 10,000 units, 506 of them available. You have an occupancy rate overall at the bottom in that red box there, 95%. So you have about 5% vacant, and you normally want to be about 4 to 6% vacant. So you're one of the few markets we've studied in the last couple of years that you're in the sweet spot. You are where you need to be, but you have so much growth coming. You're going to have household growth that you're going to have to keep adding to the inventory. What is important to kind of point out on this one is the occupancy rate for market rate housing is just about 95%, I think 94.9. So it's where it needs to be. But it's the two other ones below that, tax credit and government subsidized housing. Those are both considered affordable housing projects. I think tax credit for your area, if I'm not mistaken, accepts households, I think, or serves households that make up to about $91,000, maybe down as low as roughly $50,000. So these aren't necessarily poor households, but they're certainly economically challenged. But you can see you have 8 of these projects, whether tax credit or government subsidized, close to 300 units. They're all full, and you have a wait list to get into those affordable rentals of over 150 households. So you do have this lower income base, or even moderate to low income household base of renters. That there's nothing available for them, and that in itself leads to those, as I showed you earlier, those numbers of people living in severe housing cost burden situations. They're doing that because there is nothing under these affordable housing programs available, so they got to pick some of these market rate rentals that really aren't affordable to them, but that's all they have to choose from. And here's a great example of that. Right on the left-hand side is market rate rentals. Again, the dark blue for Franklin, and then the royal blue for the balance of the county. And you can see in each case, these are just the common bedroom, bathroom combinations we put in here. There's other ones we had in the survey, but these are the most common ones we had. And you could see that everything, as in terms of a median rent, regards to the bedroom and bathroom combination, is higher in Franklin than in the rest of the county. One of the things I also wanted to just kind of let you or get you to zero in on is those rents, particularly the 2 bedrooms, whether it's 1 bath or a 2 bath. Those are the highest share of your rental stock for apartments. So you can see the median rents are close to about $2,100 or higher. And so keep that in mind as I show you again the workforce and what they earn and then what they can afford to rent. But $2,100 for the most part or more is where these rentals are for apartments in Franklin. On the right-hand side is the tax credit housing. Again, this serves households that make up to about 80% of median income, which would, for your area, again, would be close to about $90,000. Now, these rents are much, much lower. The city in blue, dark blue, and the balance of the county in the royal blue, much lower than those market rate rents on the left-hand side. The reason is those are rents are capped by the government in terms of what a property owner is allowed to charge. So that is why you see those all those units full and wait lists to get into these units, because these do represent a significant value, in some cases close to 50% or more savings relative to market rate units. So certainly a unit that the market responds to well, and there's a pent-up demand for that type of product. So another thing we have on here is the what we call non-conventional rentals. So these are anything that's not an apartment. So it's a house, a duplex, mobile home. In Franklin, you have about 113 of these available. Comes out to a vacancy rate of 3.5%. As I said before, you want to be about 4 to 6% vacant. So you are a little bit low in terms of this segment. Check out the rents though, average rents. Again, most of these units are 3-bedroom or larger. So let's take even 2-bedroom. In 2-bedroom, average rent's $2,600. 3-bedroom, $3,500. 4-bedroom, $4,200. So these are very high rents that a bulk of your workforce cannot afford. Again, I'm going to show you in a minute what your bulk of your workforce makes and then what they can rent. So keep this rent in mind. Again, I say keep the $2,600 rent in mind as I show you here in a minute what your workforce can afford and rent. And by the way, really fast at the bottom, I have the rest of the county, balance of county. It's 1.6%. So the rest of the county is in a more dire situation for these non-conventional rentals. Rentals, comparable rents with Franklin, but not a lot available. This is your for sale market. This is what's sold from 2021 up through 2024. I do have sales up through August of 2025. I'll mention those in a second. But I didn't want to put them in this graph because I didn't have a full year. I was afraid it might skew something. So in the end, I've got 2 things on here. The blue bar is showing the number of homes sold on an annual basis. You can see that it was at 1,400 in 2021, leveled off in 2022, 2023. Right when home mortgage interest rates started to pick up dramatically, it slowed down sales activity. The green line with the black number showing you the median sales price, where you were $650 in 2021, up to $750 in just that next year in 2022. Then it leveled off. Again, mortgage rates did what they were intended to do. It slowed down the acceleration of home prices. But then it took back off again in 2024 at $815,000 as a median sales price. And I think for 2025, if I'm not mistaken, against a partial year, that was hovering around just under $800,000. So it does look like it leveled back off a bit in 2025. but you still have these climbing rates that, again, a bunch of your workforce wouldn't be able to afford. This is what's available. 283 homes were available as of August of last year. And when I compare that with all owner-occupied housing units, we come back with this availability rate of 1.2%. And just to give you, again, perspective, what's normal, what's healthy, it's about 2 to 3% is a healthy market. So you were pretty good on the rental, the multifamily apartment side. But here on the for sale side, you're below where you need to be. You need more available units for people to purchase as their incomes change, as they get married. Seniors are downsizing, all those kind of things, people wanting to move to the area. You have a disproportionately low share of available units. All right, this is the available supply. I just focus in on the table probably itself is probably more important. And this is list price of what's available as of, again, August of 2025. And check out your home prices. I have never seen this before. Again, I understand you're one of the more affluent markets and counties in the United States, but nonetheless, I've never seen such a small inventory of housing product available to purchase under $300,000. You have 3 homes. The 1.1% of what your available stock is priced under $300,000. And it's not much better in the next 2 ranges too, right? 300 to 399. You have 18 homes. 400 to 499, 21 homes. So you just don't have a lot of stuff that maybe some folks might refer to as entry-level homes. So that's certainly a challenge for the area. And even though you have some of these higher priced homes, 68 at this 500 to 750 range, 59 at the 750 to 999 range, at over $1 million, you got 114. Remember, you got all that growth that's expected, so you are going to need additional available for sale housing units. But nonetheless, not much available that's affordable to your workforce. This is senior care housing, so it's independent living, so typically no real services other than maybe housekeeping or meal plans. But you have those in here. Then you have assisted living, and you have nursing homes as well. And we surveyed 15 of these properties. Your occupancy rate overall is 84%. I put in that red box all the occupancy rates for each one of these, compared to just to the right, that column to the right, the vacancy rate or occupancy rate for on the national level. And so you're pretty close and you're pretty in line with those national numbers. The exception would be the nursing homes. The nursing homes, just to keep in mind, because of the nature of them and the people that live there, a lot of those are in there for short periods of time. And so a lot, whether it's somebody just had a medical procedure and only in there for a couple weeks, and then we've got seniors that are passing away. So give me 1 second. I probably need about 15 minutes. Thank you. So you have occupancy levels. So they're pretty in line with these national numbers. The thing to keep in mind though is you remember if I showed you that slide of household growth by those different age cohorts, and your most significant change was households ages 75 and older. So you are going to have this growing base. Many of them will require some kind of housing, whether it's independent living or those that are going to need services as their health condition declines. So this is a segment to watch, and I think there's an opportunity, even if these occupancy rates aren't dramatically different than some of the national averages. All right, so this is probably to me one of the most important slides in here. So this is I had to split this into 2 slides. So this is the first half of it. These are the top 35 occupations in the metropolitan area. So this would give you some sense of their wages. And again, we didn't pick these randomly. This is the top 35. I think in your area, this makes up about 46% of the workers. So almost half of the workers are tied to these 35 occupations I'm going to talk about. You have the wages in there. So I have lower quartile for a retail salesperson, and I highlighted that one just to kind of take you through it. At lower quartile, I mean the bottom fourth of these wage earners, about $28,000 a year. At the median or midpoint is $34,000. And then I show you what they can afford to rent, whether it's the lower quartile at a 711 or median 853. Remember I showed you on those, whether it's those non-conventional rentals, meaning a house, duplex, and so forth, or those multifamily apartments. Most of those are $2,100 or higher. So you can see how far short the working class, in this case a retail salesperson, is. Same thing for your home prices at the lower quartile. That retail person should be able to afford a home at $94,000 or at the median level of $113,000, and your median list price or what's available was close to $800,000. So you can see home ownership is so far out of reach for these folks. Now, one caveat to this is I realize this is one wage earner, and so most households there will be another wage earner, or somebody has a second income. Some households might even have a third person earning income. But the point being is you would have to triple these what rents these people can afford. Triple their incomes before these people can afford the typical rentals in your market. And again, home ownership is incredibly far out of reach. You could multiply these by 7, 8 times before they get to the point where they could be able to purchase a typical home. And remember, I showed you really have 3 homes priced under $300,000. So again, triple, quadruple some of these in terms of what they can afford. Okay, they can afford something. There just isn't much for them to choose from. Anything you see in red basically is telling you that those workers at these wages, what they can afford, is not a common housing alternative in Franklin. A little bit different on the second half of this. Now you do have some on the rental side, like a registered nurse. Okay, now they can afford some of the typical rentals in this market, general operation managers and software developers and others. So there are some that can afford a rent in this market, but for the most part, they're still far out of reach for a lot of these workers. And then home ownership, again, this not even close to what somebody could afford. A few other slides here in terms of some other things beyond demographics, economics, and housing. We looked at 4 properties that could be developed upon. Of these 53, 20 of them had at least some kind of building on it that may be able to be converted into housing, and then 33 other properties that were vacant or undeveloped that could be, again, turned into residential development. We did not look at, by the way, this is your public bus route on here in red, just to kind of show where the housing was, or of the sites were relative to the public transit system. But what we didn't do is we didn't look at things like, is this in a floodplain? Does it have access to water and sewer and other essential utilities? The point is, you do have sites. Again, are these all viable sites? That would be up to the developer to determine what can and cannot be done. But you have sites, and so that is a good sign, because some markets we go into, you don't have them. We look at government regulations. So this is basically your zoning for the area, all your different zoning classifications. In the end, our takeaway after reviewing this, and there's a lot of data in the report, but in the end, you're heavily, and it's not a surprise, you're heavily zoned towards low density, single family homes, things like that, bigger lots. Again, kind of typical for higher income, more affluent communities. But what this does tell us is you don't have a lot of zoning classifications that would allow for higher density multifamily housing, whether that's rentals or condominiums. That is much, much less frequent in Franklin. And so that if you're trying to address housing needs by doing more greater volume of units, you just don't have the density in most of these zoning classifications that would make it a bit of a challenge. One other thing we looked at was development costs. So I listed all those here on the left. So it's all your different, whether it's the land, whether it's the wages, whether it's the different governmental fees that are listed down there. If you see an X on there, that basically means that category, that topic, when we compared, and I put the explanation to the right under these comments, when I compared Franklin with other communities around the greater Nashville, you were at a disadvantage. If you have a check mark, you're either in line or you're at an advantage with these other communities. So you can see those areas in terms of development fees where the challenges are. It's mostly tied to the land cost. Some of it's tied to wage and construction job sector. And there you have the sewer impact fee. It's a little bit higher than the other communities. And then your overall impact fees that we listed down here, notably higher than some of these other communities. So some things are in your favor in terms of the development costs. Others make it a little bit tougher if somebody's trying to come in and do maybe more affordable housing product. These are the housing gap numbers. Rental on the top half, you have 37, almost 3,800 units in terms of a gap. And at the bottom, for sale housing, about 6,200. We did break these up, these different columns, the lower income, households and then corresponding lower rents or lower home prices on the left-hand side. And as you go across to the right, it's higher incomes, higher rents, higher home prices. For the rental side, you can see these numbers are fairly consistent across these different affordability levels. It's probably one of the more ones I've ever seen. So you really have a need at all affordability levels, the lowest incomes to the highest. For sale is a little bit different now. It's more, even though you don't have a lot of product priced under $300,000, nonetheless, because of your composition of who you have now and the projections that who you're expected to have, it's going to drive demand for these moderate, and I call moderate, at least in your area, about $306,000 or higher. But you can see these higher priced homes are going to have significant demand in the years ahead. One of the things I need people to make sure they understand, because I've seen people misuse these studies, is they think we need to build 3,800 rental units and 6,200 for sale units, so over 10,000 units. That does not mean you need to build this many units. It does mean, though, you have people that are struggling financially, that if there was financial assistance, like housing choice vouchers that could help people, first-time home buyer programs, things like that. So not all of this has to be housing. Some of this can be assistance to try to help people with some of their financial challenges with housing in Franklin. But nonetheless, you have about 10,000 units that need to be addressed in some capacity. And a big part of that would be new construction. And then I listed out these different possibilities for housing strategies. Again, there's so many paths through every one of these that you could take one of these topics and dissect it into many ways to try to resolve some of this stuff. So you'll see our recommendations themselves are somewhat broad because it's up to the community to figure out the exact path you want to take. Nonetheless, we listed these out. You setting housing goals and priorities based on what we have, aligning your affordable housing alternatives with your public transportation system. So if you do more affordable housing, it would probably be more beneficial to have that closer to public transit routes if possible. Continue to support the high-end housing product. You saw all that growth that's projected for higher income households, so continue to support that kind of product. But you also have to think of a way to try to incentivize or encourage affordable workforce housing. And not even affordable workforce, it could be affordable senior housing. But you do need housing for the moderate to lower income households in your area because, again, they just don't have much to choose from and they're struggling financially. Modifying some of your existing policies. There are so many programs and incentives out there that communities have tried to do to encourage certain types of housing, so you can certainly explore those things. Senior housing, I showed you the senior growth numbers. You will need to think about how your seniors are going to age in place or how you accommodate seniors that are locating to your area. You do have the Franklin Housing Commission. I know Bo is part of that, but now that there's some more data and some direction, my hope is that the Housing Commission will take those up and start to think, how could they be more proactive in their efforts. There's obviously things you can do to attract certain developers or types of developers that do certain kind of product that you're seeking. So there's a lot of approaches that I can share with you that communities do. We did list in the study more than 60 developers, lenders, and others that you could reach out to. And you're doing this one here to support the Expand Education Outreach campaign. You're doing it, and I think this is my fourth or fifth presentation in some capacity in the Franklin area, and so you're doing that, but words should still be spread in terms of what this study is telling the community and why housing is important. And then I know some communities have tried to do something with an online presence with housing, and I know you have some of that already, but there are certainly things I think you could do to build a really robust housing resource center. With that said, there's my contact information. There was a lot of other stuff we did study in this report, and if we have time, probably one of the ones I do want to talk a little bit is about what we learned from employers. But out of respect of your time, because I know we're at 5:10 your time, I want to make sure we have time for questions, and then if you have time for me just to talk a little bit more about the employer survey in particular, I'd like to do that.
Thank you so much. Board, question?
Y'all there? I can't hear anything.
Yes. Hi, Patrick. We're getting some
Okay.
things maneuvered around, and
Okay.
we're going to get ready to ask some questions here.
Provide one.
For one second, I panicked and like I spoke for 35 minutes. I thought, there's nobody there. They didn't hear me.
I'm looking at everybody and I don't see any.
1 second there, Patrick.
Yeah, take your time.
I'd start out by, I appreciate those regulatory barrier comments that you made, but the numbers I've heard as far as our in and out commute are different than your numbers, at least the ones that we obtained from our Transportation Policy Board. We're told they're a little closer to equal, and I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, but those don't seem quite right.
So was the comment, it's a little bit hard to hear, was the comment that the numbers you see on people commuting in and out are nearly equal?
Yes, based on what we learned at the Transportation Policy Board. And I'll verify that again, but it's pretty ingrained in my brain.
Were those numbers, was that Franklin or was that Williamson County?
Williamson County.
Through
Yeah, I
you.
have. Yeah, I'm going to look really fast. Give me 1 second. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with the Franklin numbers that we had in the report, but I also put in the study those that are commuting. Here we go. It's a little bit closer. So for county, Williamson County itself, I've got 110,000 coming in and 71,000 going out. So not 50-50, but much
Much
more
closer.
balanced than what Franklin was. Again, I don't know what numbers or source you had from that other study.
I'm not sure either. Other
But
questions?
I guess my advice is you look at these people that are commuting in, regardless of like where the number is. I mean, it's a lot. You've got tens of thousands, whatever it is. You have tens of thousands of people that are commuting in, and where my concern would be, and it's just not you all, it's markets across the country. I think where my concern is, these people are coming in, and some of them are coming long distances. Some of them are of modest incomes, and so that is hard for them to sustain that. And why is that a problem for Franklin? What's a problem for your employers? Because that makes you vulnerable to turnover. In fact, I mean, this is kind of a quick segue to one of the most critical pieces that I did not put in the presentation, but I did want to mention, was we did survey a lot of your employers, and your employers are saying, housing's a problem. More than half of them said housing is somehow impacting me as an employer. And the top answers that they gave us, which are no different than anywhere else in the country, was it creates a problem with us attracting workers, but also important, it's a problem of us retaining our workers. And so we've seen that repeatedly around the country where there's a point where, particularly if you've got a lot of the workforce coming in your case you do, again, over 80% of the people that work in your city aren't from the city, that even makes you more vulnerable, right? You're relying so much on these outsiders coming in, and many of them traveling long distances and having financial challenges of probably paying for gas, particularly in these days. It's a challenge for your employers. And so and that came across in the survey.
Vice Mayor?
How would you, I mean, to me, on the list of contributing factors, the cost of land is really the driving, from what I can tell, of these cost factors. I mean, even our impact fees, $6,000 difference or whatever to $8,000 difference is not really making a significant impact on when you got people who are $300,000, $400,000 away from affordability. But land is where the big gap is. So how would you suggest a community even begin to address that? It seems like it's kind of market related. What can we do to address that, to get $300,000 to $500,000 homes? I mean, more density is one way, but is there anything creative that you would suggest?
That was very hard to hear, but I think I got the gist of that. The question, tell me if I was wrong, the question is, how do we get more homes developed that are priced under $500,000? Was that the general sentiment?
Sure. Yes, that's fine. I mean, and with no saying that the land is the biggest contributing factor to our housing cost, it looks like it's not impact fees or some of these other things.
Right.
So, knowing that that's one of the major factors in the cost of our housing, what strategies?
Yeah, so there's a lot that you can do. And I'll just throw out a handful, but there really is a lot. And if you all want, I didn't put it in this presentation. I think I have it in the study, but if I don't, I can get it. Links to these other resources that will go further than what I'm about to say. But there are creative things that you can do to try to make it a little bit more viable for developers to come in and build something that is more affordable. In this case, we'll just say under $500,000. I mean, it could be, just throwing out ideas, but it can be whether the city owns any land that they're not using. I've seen cities put that land on the market designated for residential development and putting some kind of restriction in place that says that has to be more affordable. I mean, you all would have to define what more affordable is, but you could put that in there. I've seen some communities or not communities, businesses take land that they have or acquire land near their business and turn that around and sell it off at a lower price so that somebody's going to develop that. And a very good example, I'm just outside the Columbus, Ohio area, and Children's Hospital here is a great example where the whole area that was around them was significantly economically depressed, had disinvestment in housing for years. So what Children's Hospital did here was buy up a bunch of homes and then put money back into those and then make those homes available for their employees to purchase. And somebody just told me today, like if you drive around some parts of that hospital, it's much, much better than what it was years ago. So there's a case where employers are trying to figure out how do I take some of this older stock and make it a little bit better, but keep it affordable to my workforce. And so they've done that. There's opportunities for you to obviously discount some of your fees. And again, the impact fees that you have. Could you, I'm just saying things to think about, but I mean, could you lower some impact fees if there's an understanding that the developer comes in and does something that, again, is classified as affordable? So there's a lot of stuff. There's something called density bonuses. Again, I have no idea if that's legal in Tennessee. Some states don't allow that. But all that is if somebody came in to build 100 market rate apartments or 100 homes or whatever that's somewhat high priced, you allow greater density if they meet the condition that they're going to do some units or lots or whatever they're going to do at a more affordable price. And a great example to look at is Asheville, North Carolina. They've tested it, modified it, did it again, changed it. So they keep working through that. So Asheville, North Carolina is a great one to watch what a community did with density bonuses, because they knew, just like your community, they knew developers wanted to come in and do high-end stuff. So they didn't want to discourage that. What they wanted to do was incentivize those developers to say, look, we'll let you do more density if you allow some of these units to be more affordable. So anyway, those are just some of the examples. There's a ton of things you can do to try to make this a little bit more viable to do housing that's more affordable to folks.
I think we've got two more questions, Alderman Barnhill and then Alderman Berger.
Yes, going back to a comment maybe that you made some, Mayor. We've got on this screen that I'm looking at, which I guess it's 11. It shows 76,000 coming in and 27,000. I want to make sure that I understand that. That's not 76,000 outside the PSA coming in, is it? I mean, that's 76,000 people combined with what Franklin does. If you live in Franklin, you go to work in Franklin, that's in that 76,000. Now, so how many of them? It's not the 76,000 is outside. Okay.
11,000 people stay here.
1147. Okay. All right. I'm glad I asked a question then. So the 27,140 then is out, living in Franklin, going out someplace else. All right. I've answered mine.
Alderman Berger.
Did he just freeze on us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
1 second. He seems to have frozen up on us
We're all in space.
because we have an unstable network connection.
Yeah, the network's having a problem.
Good close. That was good.
We can talk about this. Well,
stop.
while we're waiting, while we're waiting.
We can send him an email.
Oh, there he is.
Here we are. We're back. Patrick,
back?
can you hear us?
Here, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, we ran into a technical issue,
Sound like
but we're
we're-
back.
Okay, so all I could hear was a discussion about the 76,000 people commuting in, but I couldn't hear the question or the context of that discussion.
I think we answered that, so Alderman Berger, go ahead with yours.
Yeah, so we used to have inclusionary zoning, but now through the state law, we don't have that anymore. But we're getting ready to do infrastructure development districts, which would allow us to dictate some of that. But I don't see us using the IDD that often. But maybe it could be used specifically for more workforce housing, especially redevelopment areas, I think. I think we ought to look at redevelopment areas within the city. In the surrounding cities, we ought to, partner with some surrounding cities and saying, like, what have you got? What do we have? What do we have? We need to identify. We do have, after 2020, some office buildings that still are empty, but it's really difficult to retrofit those office buildings into rental units or homes, or rental units or condos. But you mentioned about if the city had any land. I think, we ought to try to look at businesses. But if you
Can you just give the question?
You talked about Asheville. I wanted you to explain a little bit about what they do. Do they do density bonuses? I mean, I'm looking to see if we could do that with IDD. And then the other thing is, you talked about retaining workers. Yeah, I think it's mainly in the service industry because most of the employment centers here are high dollar employment jobs. And maybe not everybody can live here, that's for sure. But I think it's probably more of the service industry, in the service industry across the board includes our first responders as well and all those people. So can you talk a little bit about Asheville a little bit? What are you talking about the density there? And is that something, do you know of any, and also when you're talking about Asheville, I just want you to touch on that. But I looked at some of your recommendations here.
I'm gonna stop you right there, Alderman Berger. He can't understand everything you're saying, so if you could just ask a
Okay.
very short
Well,
question
let him-
for answer.
let him talk
and
about
not,
the-
you can email him
Yeah.
afterwards with your
Let's talk
question.
about the Asheville thing.
Yeah.
What were you talking about there?
Yeah, so first off, I've had this happen before. For some reason, female voices carry through very good. So I heard pretty much everything she said. So if the gentlemen want to all talk in a high-pitched voice, maybe I'll hear you guys a little bit better. Two things, right? The one was Asheville. So Asheville, I don't remember when they introduced their density bonus, and it is it's probably too complicated for me to articulate, but it is it's a tiered structure. So the more a developer is willing to include affordable housing, there's more incentives in place for them. For example, and I don't know what point it triggers, but again, they really thought this through. If you do so many units of your entire project, and for easy math, we'll just say again, it's 100 total units, but if you did 10 additional ones as affordable, they're going to let you do those 10 extra units. Otherwise, maybe zoning only lets you do 100. But because you did that, besides the bonus of the greater density, there is a provision in place that allows you now to expedite through the planning department what you're doing. Now, obviously, smaller projects are easier for them, and it might even be tied to smaller projects. But smaller projects with these density bonuses, I think only city staff has to review it. It does not have to go onto the planning commission or something like that. So there's these little tiered triggers that they have in place that as a developer, one, I'm getting to do more units, but two, there's something else. And again, that the example I gave you was an expedited review process that cuts off, I don't even know, maybe a month or 2 months of review and gets projects moving faster. So that's that part of it. You had mentioned retaining the service industry workers. I was looking again, looking at the people that are in resident workers. Here it is. So these are the people that are staying in the area. Franklin. Yeah, I have the right numbers. It looks like most of them are still pretty high wage earners, but there are some that make under $40,000 a year. In fact, there's a good about 40% of them. So you do have a lot of the people that are there that, as you said, are in the service industries, probably the cashiers and others in retail and stuff like that. They're not making very much. They're not making over 40,000. And as you saw where your rents are, whether it's the apartments or whether it was those non-conventional rentals, the people are struggling, right? It is those kind of people that are carrying the economy, people that are contributing to it.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, I think we need to keep moving forward. We appreciate you and Bo bringing this to us, and we appreciate your contact information so that we can discuss and look at this and maybe send you some additional questions as we review this with staff.
I would be happy to respond, and even beyond that, if you're running into something in the weeks, months, years ahead, I offered it to the staff earlier today. You'll have that contact information, so if individually somebody's exploring some alternative incentive, or if you want to know, hey Patrick, we're talking about this incentive, have you seen somebody do that? Well, keep in mind, we've done more than 100 of these studies, so we've worked with a lot of communities across the country. There's a good chance I know somebody that you could talk to say, hey, you guys tried this, what worked and what didn't work, and if you could have done it again, what would you have changed? So we're a great source for data, but we're also a great source to get you connected with people that, you know, they've gone through it, and I know they will help. They will certainly talk with you. So please keep that in mind.
There's one more thing, Patrick, about, it said considering implementing a proactive approach to attract and involve housing development partners. I'd like to know if other communities have developed partners with their businesses in the town. If they've, through the chamber, through the businesses, if they've partnered to try to address this problem in a true partnership where it's city and private partnerships. So if you have anything you could share with us, let us know.
Yep. Yeah. If somebody could message me that, I can get you examples, because I've tried to study other communities where the employers are trying to be part of the solution. I will tell you this, for the employer survey, I think it was close to 60% of the employers we surveyed, and I don't think I've ever seen it this high. So there's a good sign for you all, is 60% of your employers said they want to do something about housing. Now that might just be something as simple as relocation services or local housing guidance person or something like that, something basic. But the point is that your employers want to be part of the solution. So to me, if I was in charge, I would want to bring them to the table and start talking to employers. The survey's saying it's a problem, but hear from them firsthand, what's the problem? And would you all be willing to do something with us as a local government to try to help solve this? Because they're bringing the jobs in, which you want that, right? But they're also contributing to the problems. So definitely I can get you some examples around the country of where that's happening.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick, and have a great night. Appreciate your taking time.
Bo, Patrick, board, thank you all for bearing with us.
Thank you very much.
Item 2 is a event permit for Heritage Ball. That's still, we're going to put that one on deferral because they're still working on an exact location, and they'll submit their application to that effect soon. Item 3 is City of Franklin Contract 2026-0126 with ECG Wood Duck LP for development agreement establishing conditions for issuance of building permits.
So The Wood Duck Court, they are down to their last two building permits, that they would like to pull. Excuse me just a second. Yes. Okay, thank you. They're down to their last two buildings to get permits. They did do floodplain alterations, to move the floodplain boundary so that the buildings could be built. As we all know, with FEMA, it's a long process. They do have the letter of map revision from FEMA. However, because there was some change to the floodway, it requires an additional 90-day review period for public comment. That review period for public comment ends June 12th. So if FEMA receives no disputes or comments, the letter of map revision will be effective on June 12th. They would like to go ahead, get these permits at their own risk, with the understanding if something were to go wrong and FEMA does not issue that final letter of map revision on June 12th, that they would be at risk and have to tear down and put back to pre-construction state.
Questions? Alderman Potts?
Thanks, sir. Just a quick question. This is more, one comment is I have not received any comments, because this is in my ward. I haven't received any comments yet from any residents. If I do, I'll let you know. And then, Shauna, I had a question for you. If they're stating this, does legal have any concern about holding them accountable for putting it back in its original state? Or is what they've provided to us, is it locked down?
Do we have any like letter of credit or surety on
Hold on, your mic's not.
Oh, sorry.
Not for this specific item. The bonds and sureties are still, I guess they've been probably released to maintenance.
Yeah, I'm sure they
at this
have.
point, but there's not specific bonds and sureties related to this request.
So my follow-up question on that would be, are there any, do we have any financial withholdings that we can keep until they meet the need in the event that this was denied by FEMA and they have to return it to its original state?
I assume not. I'll have to pull any sort of documents what you may have, but probably not.
So how are we going to hold them accountable to it other than them stating it here?
Well, if that's something you're looking for, maybe we can add that into this agreement, because I don't think this one in particular says that.
Could we do it like if you have to do a demolition, you put a lien against the property type of situation? You know how we've had that in the past where there's a situation where we have to go and take care of something. And then we assign that cost to the property and we ultimately get paid back. Because that's what this would turn into. It could not be habitable, so you would have to demo it. Now, that is seen as a highly, highly unlikely circumstance. This is just to help with timing while the letter of map revision comes through. But you could always default to that if you needed to, I would believe, right?
Well, I mean, once you file a lien on the property, you could either let it sit. I mean, you would have to take action to foreclose on the lien at some point.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
So, I think all that's, great points. We're talking 40 days. And they've already approved this, we're just a public comment period.
Yes.
I mean, FEMA's approved, like it's done pending some sort of, someone comes out of the woodworks or the wood duck. So I mean, I would,
It's so
and then
hybrid.
two, Franklin Housing Authority, I believe, was is somehow involved in this as a partner. So I really don't think they would come to us with this kind of request without certainty. It's putting their money on the line. And if we have options like liens that obviously we don't want to have to use, but if certainly we have a contract, and if they didn't follow a contract, we could file suit. So there's lots of things there, and odds are, there's not going to be public comment. And this is one of our to speak of,
Affordable housing.
the tax credit housing that we just talked about. So if we want to help spur on something that's going on right now and not stop it for something, or pause or delay this, I think that this doesn't sound like that big of a risk to me.
Alderman Peterson.
Haven't they already done something to the land out there to build it up and out of the floodplain?
Yes, ma'am. This is just finalizing that. They cannot apply for the letter of map revision until the work itself has been
Okay,
completed.
okay. Well, I'm familiar with this, although I didn't drive out there this time, but still, it did need to be, the land needed to be changed.
Yes, ma'am.
But that's what they're saying, they just say they don't have the FEMA agreement to it yet. Is that
Right. FEMA has, for lack of a better word, conditionally approved it
Okay.
as long as there's no appeals or complaints against it to further research.
And the other buildings have already been,
Yeah, there's 8 buildings total, and the other 6 have been permitted, and COs may have been issued for some already. If not, they're getting very close.
Are you going to ask a question, Alderman Berger? Go ahead.
So we're just talking, as you said, 40 days, correct? About 40 days?
Yes, ma'am.
And in that time, they would just start preparing to build.
They,
I mean, what
they
can you
could
do in
go as
40
far
days?
as they could get it accomplished at that point,
Yeah.
in that time
Okay,
period.
They're not
Issuing a
gonna
building
get that,
permit.
they're not gonna get that far. So if they had to tear something down, they're not gonna be tearing the whole house down. Yeah, yeah. It seems more likely that they're gonna get this, so, yeah, I don't think it's a big risk.
Okay, we'll go on to item 4 is presentation of new City Hall redevelopment block guaranteed maximum price.
So the next 3 items all deal with progress on City Hall, and we are hitting a key stretch here. We are about probably 16, 17 months before we will be in the new City Hall. You can really see it taking shape on the square, so it's exciting. You all had a chance a few weeks ago to tour it in person. And so we're at that stage, and we're also at a critical stage where we can lock in the hard cost in terms of construction cost at a guaranteed maximum price. And Chris Kepper, our owner's rep, is going to walk you through the project update and those specific numbers that we're at this stage. So take it away, Chris.
Since you mentioned 4, 5, and 6, 5 has to do with the contract for commercial brokerage services, and 6 has to do with office interior contract. So go ahead, Chris.
We have a little delay here.
I'm gonna close it out and open it all in.
Which one is it? Here, way past it. There it is. Okay. It's like, wait. go.
Is anybody having a birthday? We can sing happy birthday to them.
We had a bunch of birthdays in the last week on this board.
We don't need to see. Let's just pull up. Please don't.
Had like 3 in the last week. And Matt and Patrick, I think, all in the last week.
There we go.
Here we
Are
go.
we live?
Just in time.
Is this working?
You're safe from birthdays.
I didn't want to have to sing. Thank you. Just want to go through, update construction costs, where we are in the project, and kind of rediscuss any areas within the project. As you know, the City Hall is a City Hall block redevelopment. We've got a new City Hall building, 97,460 gross square feet, 3 stories. We have a 1-acre community park, a parking garage subsurface, approximately 200 spaces, a front entrance, expanded front entrance plaza, 3rd Street streetscape on both sides, improvements, and commercial tenant space, along with upgraded site utilities up and down 3rd Church, into the cistern in the park. And this, you can see right here, I'll get to the slide later, but this is an example of the entrance into the front of the City Hall that's being expanded. New City Hall, boardroom, office space, public meeting space, 97,460 square feet with the current construction cost, $63,497,817. 1-acre community park. We're still working on final renderings of the fountains, trellises, treescape, canopies. Very nice area that spans the whole acre behind the City Hall.
On that component, on the community park, we are working on opportunities to have private sponsorships or support for key elements like the fountain, the seating areas, swings, those kind of things that could be a real opportunity for individuals in the community to participate. So that's something we're working on with Friends of Franklin Parks to have that opportunity for folks that should they so choose.
This is recent pictures of the underground parking garage, trying to get the vast scope of what it looks like underneath. Approximately 200 parking spots. We have storage and stormwater lab facilities down there. The front entrance plaza, as I showed, this is just another angle of it, expanding into the park, or expanding into the square, allows more openness, accessibility to the public restrooms. Streetscape up and down both sides of 3rd Avenue, different types of planters, trees, shrubs, curbs, street improvements. About 4,500 commercial tenant space. We have up to 3 spaces there. It could be turned into 1 I think that's one of the items coming up next. I don't know if a kratom shop or a vape shop would be part of that. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
See if we're paying attention.
Yeah, just wake everybody up. Site utility upgrades up and down 3rd, as everybody's seen, or different folks have maybe had complaints. 3rd Avenue has been ongoing from early start of the project, just to replace mains, laterals coming in and out of that 3rd Avenue. So we've had occasional shutdowns, more 1-lane shutdowns than full closures, but it does show the magnitude of all the site utilities that were going through 3rd for that entire block. Right now, we're at a guaranteed maximum price of $96,637,552. We're projecting that to be $95 and some change as we continue to go through VE process. That could drop lower, but the projection is just based on sitting on unknowns and 3.3 roughly million in contingency and allowances that are built in that contract. This kind of shows how the slides have progressed with ERP 1, ERP 2, ERP 3, 4 is where we are now, and then the final completion. Construction costs spent to date, this will be updated, currently at 24 million, but we just did receive a pay application which doesn't reflect what's in here. This slide here talks about the GMP cost for all the ERPs. And then as when we talk GMP, we're talking construction costs only. We're sitting with 3.4 million in contingency and allowance. We're projecting 1.6 of that being spent. And that's based on just recent changes or updates or unknowns. There could be a possibility none of it gets spent, but we have certain allowance buckets within the contract that we know will go towards the design progression, such things as final elevator cab finishes, things like that that are not yet defined. So we have a $50,000, placeholder for as an allowance for elevator cab finishes. And as that gets more defined, we may only use 33,000 of it. The unknowns here at the bottom, as we're still defining technology scope, owner furnished, owner items, the magnitude of technology going into the project, and furniture. They're kind of the two biggest ones, as we've just selected a furniture vendor and trying to move forward with value engineering those furniture items, bringing these costs down. Value engineering to date, we have accepted over $9 million, $9,334,651 to be exact. We currently have 3.3 in queue as we're evaluating these numbers and reviewing for acceptance to see if it's feasible, viable, see what the solutions are, what impacts it may have on the design. Most of these are related to finishes. These are some of the examples that we have accepted. The 90 mil to 60 mil roof, you may look at this number and be like, why is it less? It's the thickness of the roof, but we were able to negotiate a same warranty. So the 90 mil was a 30-year warranty, I believe. We were able to keep a 30-year warranty with a 60 mil roof. Monitor leak detection system, that was one we pulled out early. That's the area under the park, the garage area that sits under the park. The coffered ceilings, granite curbs that were spec'd and changed those to concrete curbs up and down on the streetscape. And these are just some examples that totaled into that $9 million. Here's a recent, and as to show how fast the project is going, you all are here last on this date. This is what the aerial view looked like. They were getting ready to pour this portion. This area, whole area out here is the park and the last part of the garage. 16 days later, we have 3/4 of the park formed for the top floor of the garage, or what you call the ceiling of the garage. And the latest update, I wasn't in time, but this has been poured and they're finishing. The last pour of this area will be poured tomorrow night. We have 2 more grand pours after tonight, and then all large concrete pours will be poured out for the project. Some more recent pictures. The tower crane is expected to come down July of this year. And if there's any questions, probably.
Alderman Bland.
So I appreciate us trying to defer cost and find sponsors for things at the park, but I'm concerned about what the parameters are. Like, we don't want Roger Smith GMC fountain.
Yeah, I should not have said it as sponsorships. Let's say it as commemorative, like we have on the park benches and the pavers downtown. Think of it more of that.
Okay,
that regard. I misspoke.
I was like,
in saying that term. Yeah.
For somebody who does fundraising, I'm
Yes.
like, okay, it just cheapens the way you presented it. I was like, okay.
My
So
apologies.
I would love,
It is
you're
commemorative
fine.
in nature is the thought. It's a
I would
great-
love to see
yeah.
the parameters on that and let us.
And we're
kinda have
developing
some-
that. We'll bring that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Because appreciate that.
Vice Mayor?
So if you go back to the cost slide, what happened with the ERP3? It was I think that was a big, from the projected, I went back through all the last other presentations. And
Is that the piling?
The piling is in there separate, the piers, the 2.3 for piers.
Yeah, that was part of 3. Yeah.
But ERP, I think the original, and look, this is not like an indictment. This is just, I'm asking questions. Like ERP3 was 41. Everything was kind of going in line, and then there was a major shift, and it ended up being 50 and I think there was an estimate of 41 back in August and then maybe November. So I didn't know what happened there. And if you need to come back and answer, that's fine.
I need to go back through and review those old slides and get you exact. Some of those had to do with contingencies that we were kind of forecasting of what would be an ERP, the last ERP, and some of those items would have rolled into the
Into
third,
the earlier one.
into an early one, and then the amount of contingencies or tariffs, everything else we were holding at the time. And I need to go back and see what that previous one was.
That's
but
that you brought up my second point. Please do, and you can come back and report, or but sooner rather than later, the tariffs. What I'm trying to figure out is we had the last like real cost summary estimate where there was kind of lows and highs before we just started seeing like the actual project costs, which was like in November and January, and you know, we're definitely on the high side, and tariffs were about $5 million in August, and I know those have gone away. I guess what I want to make sure I'm seeing here, while the bottom dollar number is coming in close to kind of some of the bottom dollar numbers that we've seen over time, the buckets of things have been filled with other money, right? And so we have had the value engineering, but the tariffs are obviously not there anymore. I want to make sure that 4.5, however much it ended up being, you know, was that actually saved, or was the cost absorbed somewhere else? Because I guess what I'm seeing is if I take this 95 and I look at the original or one of the most 2 iterations ago, you know, we're at 92 at the high estimate on that, and 95 now, but we had these other things in there like $5 million in contingencies and $5 million in tariffs and some other things. So I want to make sure I've got the real picture, and I think that's a lot of times when you're presenting before BOMA, and it's not just you. I mean, I think staff probably guides a lot of this as well. I feel like it'd be easy for us to say, hey, this is 95, and oh well, I have a 92 here and a 82 here but like. There's more to the story, I feel like. Not that we're not getting the full picture, but I would like to know more details on some of the math here. What has gone over? What has gone under? Because we've got a $1.3 million furniture overage and a $700,000 tech overage. You know, and look, this all starts to add up, and I think. And some of this is all going into the GMP. Help us understand too what happens if they come in under the GMP.
Well, first I'll get the variances.
I just threw a lot at you.
All the variances we can get to you.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not even saying this is wrong, but.
Right, and we're not carrying, I think all the tariffs have been eliminated. I think there's still with the elevator, there might be, if I'm recalling, like 35,000 within that 50,000. I gave an example for a tariff-related elevator. But we will get those variances laid out. And when we talk about the GMP is just construction cost.
Correct.
That's the terminology. If we talk total project cost, that's the bottom number down here.
And those are not locked in.
These numbers down here at the bottom are not locked in. They're not within the contractor's GMP. And then speaking of that, as one example, we had 900,000 allocated for demountable walls. We had that in the contractor scope. Realizing that we can go buy that direct through a vendor, brought that number down to 700. I think it was 699 or 701, and we just kind of put in the 750 just to make sure there's nothing else that changes within those demountable walls that would cover that. So that to kind of show a savings, but how we've been pulling numbers out of the GMP to go to the bottom line that's now out of the contractor scope. We will get the variances.
Get the variances.
And it depends on we have to decide how much detail we want to say.
I would like all the detail, personally.
But break it down per category within the construction.
Yeah, and if we need to meet it, because here's the deal. If we've been working towards like, hey, we got to get to 95 million or whatever is where we want to end up, and there've been overages that have been, maybe we hadn't done as much value engineering as we could have done because we've been saying, hey, well, we got all this to work with. No, I think the BOMA wanted us to drive that price down with smart decisions, and haven't been able to see how that. I've seen big numbers, but not really how and they've been different each time to some degree. So that consistency. But then what if they come in and they deliver it for 90 million? What happens? So if if Skanska delivers it for 90 million, don't they say, aren't there shared savings in our contract?
A shared savings, and that's based on, I have to go back and look at the exact language. We actually had a conversation with Skanska about that the other day, is based on just the contingency bucket, not because allowances are dedicated to the project. So if we're holding $2.1 million in contingency and there's an unforeseen that hits that contingency that was not in the drawings that we would pull out of that contingency, that comes out of the contingency, but then the savings would be split based on what the new contingency would be. So if it's 90 million sub costs, the shared savings isn't going to be based on 90 million. It's going to be based on the contingency bucket. And we're trying to
after the GMP, I got you.
We're trying to define that sooner than later. Now that because the structure is the largest unforeseen cost of what's going down and up. So we're trying to define that.
Well, then that really makes me want to know what ERP3 happened, because 41 or 42 to 50, that's an $8 million swing from some of the previous slides, and I reserve the right for the slides to have need to be looked at. Maybe this is a massive project. I'm not, but this is the time where we can see a lot of the things that have happened and really dig into the numbers and really understand as a board, like kind of how we've done. And I think it's important for us not to just say, oh, well, 95 is less than 100. And so, great job. Like, I feel like there's a little bit, at least I feel a little bit of obligation, maybe because I've been involved in it a little more than most. But furniture is another thing. We're about to talk about it. I'll hold those comments until we talk about the furniture.
And then, but those variances are, I track those. So
I'm sure you do.
That will be quickly for us to talk about and get together.
Thank you.
Alderman Caesar.
Thanks, Mayor. My question's about the park. And so while furniture we knew was going to have to come in, when you have park construction at almost 4 million, is there a furniture component with the park that's going to be another $1 million, $1.5 million that we're trying to offset with some of the sponsorship or the endowment type costs?
So there is within that number $414,000 of what I call furniture built into that number.
Obviously, that's not the right name, but
yeah. So
this is the full cost of the park.
Yes,
if that's the question.
And that's actually, I think to exact, like close to 414,000 is tables, chairs, that type of furniture that is added to the park. That is being discussed as pulling that out of the contractor scope and looking at it for possible, I forgot your vernacular, but I don't want to say it wrong, the donation.
Commemorative.
Yes,
Commemorative, endowments, I think was what I said, but commemorative is probably the better term. Thank you.
Can we go to item 5?
I've got one quick question.
Okay, Alderman Berger, go
Do we
ahead.
have any holdups on our materials? Or we have any back orders or anything like that that is hindering our development? Okay.
No, we discuss that every week at some of our construction meetings, or all of our construction meetings, but right now,
Things are coming
steel
in
is on
as
track,
ordered.
materials
Okay.
on track.
That's all I had. Yeah, thanks.
Item 5 is the authorizing the execution of City of Franklin contract number 2026-0155 with Hamilton Young for commercial brokerage services and property management. Any questions about that one? Next is contract 2026-0056 with Nashville Office Interiors for furniture distributor services for the new Franklin City Hall. Kelly.
All right. This is a contract with Nashville Office Interiors. It is for a furniture distributor to lead the selection, procurement, storage, installation, long-term maintenance, and warranty process for us. It involves over 200 workstations and office spaces, furniture for meeting rooms, breakout spaces, reception waiting areas, lunch spaces, all of the furniture, including storage, that goes into the building. We are carrying a higher number here, but we are carrying a full picture of what those costs could be, the furniture items, but we will work as we move through this process, because it's only an initial estimate, to find savings and value engineering where we can.
We've had some discussions with design team, et cetera, on this, and there's a sense that this is very much the upper limit, that we have additional work that we can do to bring this number down, but we are where we are with this at this stage, and we wanted to carry that number for a conservative estimate going forward. We'll be back with you with a much more refined number here, I would think, in the very near future. I don't know if we have a timeline for when we think we could provide that.
There's a process
Yeah.
for that, working through different areas over time, so we'll be back as soon as we can.
Do you have a question, Alderman Berger?
I just want to make a comment. Sometimes we're looking to cut into save, and I think furniture, sometimes if you cut back on the quality, then you're going to pay for it again real soon, because it breaks down. Pardon? Yeah, it breaks down. There she goes. She just fell. But it breaks
We're not
down
getting
and
these.
it wears out, because we have a lot of people using it. And it's really important, the quality of the furniture. So if it costs a little bit more, I think we had to look at quality and where. I know we're going to look at commercial grade,
Yes.
but I just want to throw that out there. Thanks.
Anybody else? Alderman, Vice Mayor?
I held my comments on the furniture the last time, but I would agree. But we were either 50% off or on the projected, or that's the thing here.
You need to add those two numbers together, to be fair. The 900,000 was in the furniture number to begin with. The demountable walls. So that number is
Oh,
more
okay.
like 3.4. I just want to be clear on the math.
Yeah, well, hold
It's
on.
higher than we want it, and that's why we're going to keep working on
And
it. but
this isn't a dig.
You need to add those together. That'll be
But then I would add the 750 and the 3.85.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So we're $200,000 off. So 1.3. Still, what is Omnia? Is Omnia like the state contract? What is it? Says the Omnia.
Yes, it's the cooperative
cooperative
to
purchasing.
provide standardized pricing across furniture distributors.
Oh, across.
And
so-
going with the cooperatives typically helps us get the best value because you're leveraging against a large number of purchasers. So we look to do that wherever we can with technology, furnishings, et cetera.
So that's like a built-in quoting kind of like. That makes sense.
Like a purchasing cooperative type of
Yes.
thing.
Right.
The difference in the two numbers is partly because the initial soft bid that was in the previous estimate didn't include all the components that are in the city hall. So this one we know does, but we'll look for savings and still trying to retain mid-grade quality commercial furnishings for the building.
No, and they're just a big variance. That's why I brought it up. Not because I don't think we're doing the right thing. It just it all adds up, doesn't it?
It does.
It does.
Thank you.
Item 7, I'm sorry. Discussion relating to the potential use of an infrastructure development district for the Armstead development located in northwest corner of New Highway 96 West and Machatcher Parkway.
All right, we have some staff reflection on this, and then I know we have the developer team here as well to say a few things as we start off. First of all, I want to thank the Armistead team for kind of being willing to be our test case in looking at this. So we're applying our IDD policy that is under consideration tonight at your voting meeting to this project as it's been submitted at this point. And the state legislation has passed. It's waiting the governor's signature, but it does clear the hurdles so that we can truly be what's called a host municipality, which means we can move forward with implementing IDD. So that's an exciting place to be. And we're looking at how this applies and how this relates to your policy as you have it considered today. To be clear, Armistead is fully approved, fully entitled. It's an excellent development, high quality project. That is not what we're talking about tonight. We're really talking about applying the structure and the policy as we have it. It is a little bit unique in that it's a look back. Going forward, you will typically be having this discussion as a component with the development process. You'll have the discussion around what's envisioned and how it fits your policy as you're giving those approvals, as opposed to looking back. You may well have some other look backs as well, but this is a little bit unique in that regard. And to just sort of do a quick overview of what your policy entails, you really said we wanted to do this in ways that provided a distinct public benefit. And you targeted 4 specific areas that you wanted to see. Not that a project had to encompass all 4, but these were areas of great importance in the board's view. And those 4 areas were 4 pillars, as I like to think of them, were exceptional design, attainable housing, infrastructure investment, and redevelopment. So those were 4 categories that you really put emphasis on. So tonight, I think our question is to look at this, give it consideration in the light of those 4 categories, and ask the basic question, does IDD participation provide that which we would not otherwise receive? Okay, is this a difference maker? In providing this, is it providing something above and beyond what you're gonna get anyway, to put it another way? So Amy and Michael and Walter are here to talk on it, and we'll take you through our assessment. We've also applied the something we've talked to you about, a calculator that gets at the essential. It's in the context of annexation evaluation, but it's also can be looked at in terms of a development as well. Something we talked to you about. We did apply that calculator to this project as well, so we'll share that with you. So Amy, walk them through a quick analysis, and then we'll give you the other pieces, and then welcome the development team to the floor to give their perspective.
Yeah, thank you. So staff used the city priorities and the sample commitments in your policy that you've just adopted as the guidance of how we were going to analyze this, to see if it meets your priorities in full or in part or not at all. So to summarize, staff felt that Armistead met one of the criteria, one of the priorities in full. It did not meet 2. And there's one priority, which is the public infrastructure, where there's components where you can see where it's meeting some of your commitments, but not in the fullest range. So I'll go through those, starting with the one that they met the full credit on, which was extraordinary benefits and quality development. Armistead is an amazing project. It's going to provide a very unique neighborhood for our city, something that we don't have today. And looking at the sample commitments, it did almost all of them, the ones that you guys had provided in the policy. It aligns with our guiding principles of Envision Franklin. It demonstrated engagement with community stakeholders. It had a 5-day charrette at the beginning of the process. That's not something you see very often. And it's a high-quality, place-making, distinct sense of place neighborhood. You know, Armistead, I would say at the root of it, is grounded in preserving the rural character and context, especially of that area, and not just preserving it, but incorporating it into the neighborhood and extending that to future generations. That's just a very unique thing. So I think hands down, quality development got full credit. Going to the end of the priority list, redevelopment. The redevelopment city priority doesn't really apply to this site. That's meant for infill sites, sites that are underutilized, aging. That's just not this. So right away, that one is not met. The other criteria, the other priority that was not met was attainable housing. I think you can point to Armistead and see that it has a very large range of housing types. So for housing choices, they are there in terms of the different housing types. But when you talk about attainable housing as it's presented in the policy, that's not a part of the Armistead development. Nor was it a part of their notice of intent. Because that's the hard part about this, is that it's already been approved. So we're looking at the development plan that's already been there, but we are also looking at the notice of intent of what they could promised to do. And that attainable housing was not a part of that notice of intent either. So again, no credit as a staff analysis. So the last one that staff had a little bit of hard time analyzing, I would say staff could clearly say that the enhancement of infrastructure, public service, safety, and sustainability was not met in full. The goal, as Eric said, was to provide a robust network that expands beyond the project itself. What are we getting out of this that would not otherwise be within the development? And there's nothing in the Armistead plan or the notice of intent that goes beyond the borders in a robust way. But there are several things about it. I'll go through my list here to talk about what Armistead is doing. One, they are providing a educational and demonstration facility on site that's going to be open to the public. So this is enhancing our educational opportunities in the city. They are providing a food source on site where you can come and buy food. I don't think that there is a food desert in this area, but this is another opportunity for a food source. Let's see. Also, they have made a commitment to public art. So this is something that you don't see in the development plan per se, but it was in a lot of their presentations as they went through the approval process. And it is in their notice and the intent that they have this commitment to have public art throughout the development. Public art is something we don't have a lot of in the city, and so that you could argue that this is extending our public art network within the city, particularly out here. I don't know of any public art in this side of the city. And they do have a trail system in their plan, so that's going above and beyond just the standard sidewalks that are provided in neighborhoods per the city ordinances. So that's great. And it's throughout the development, and it is open to the public. It's all in open spaces that are accessible to anyone that walks into the neighborhood. It doesn't necessarily connect to a larger community of trails or a public parks master plan system of trails. So it's insular to their development, but accessible and there. So again, sort of a minor sort of enhancement of our public networks. They also, looking at your guidelines and your sample commitments, they are committing to applying low impact development techniques, LID techniques with their stormwater features. When they went through the process, there was an opportunity to look at could they ask for modifications to our BMP manual to expand that, to have other opportunities, creative ways to do LID. Ultimately, they decided not to pursue that. It would have extended the approval process time. So while they're committing to looking creatively at things, they will be looking at creative solutions with our existing standards. So we haven't expanded our network in any way in that sense, other than they might find some creative solutions that we haven't done thus far. But it is within our existing regulations. And like I said at the beginning, the project does not provide any new public infrastructure beyond what was required with the TIA. It also does not have any major thoroughfare plan projects that are being escalated faster because of this project. So again, this is a very hard one to look at. It does not meet the priorities in its fullest sense, but there's a list of things that you can consider for that criteria. And I can turn it over.
One other piece I would add, and then Michael will talk about the calculator piece, I believe. One of the components of your policy also gets at the loan to value ratio. And you stated as a recommendation within that a 3-to-1 be the target. The state law requires 2-to-1. And they can address this when the development team talks. But as I understand it, they're targeting a 2-to-1. I would really point out that your policy says 3-to-1. Our study of higher performing cities, say AAA and AA bond rated cities from Texas, showed 3-to-1 or higher was very common. And so, I would really have us take a careful look at that. We don't want to just be at the bare minimum. We want to have something that performs higher, and that it's not uncommon at all to see that especially in cities that I think we would consider more of our peer and states that have been doing this for a while. That's a pretty typical track record to see a higher ratio in place in those communities. So, Michael, I think you're next.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Walters Young, Chief Budget and Performance Officer. We talked about, and we've presented this tool in front of you in the past. And I want to thank the Armistead team because it was an unusual request, which is your development is already approved. Can we get more information about it? But we wanted to be able to put this through the calculator that we presented. And so there is an attachment that says data request, which is the information as it was provided by the team to the city. And then this is the summary 4 pages of the calculator. On the first page, you can see that it is simple development information. So we have the itemization of, again, what it is, water districts, design concepts, and then acreage of parks created, lane miles created, sewer line miles created, reclaimed, etc. And most important to make this calculator work, quite honestly, is the number of units and the estimated market value of those particular units. Now, why is that important? Because it generates our estimates of property tax collections for these developments. It also provides level of population for development, as well as number of room keys added. There is a hotel part of this property, a 75 key hotel, which of course generates occupancy tax. There is also a commercial retail component, which generates a degree of sales tax. So the summary is on page 3. And it shows that, by and large, we are in the green, both in terms of a recurring revenue stream as well as one time. Page 4 details this in greater detail by fund. Our estimates for the general fund is that we generate about $1.8 million in recurring taxes. Those are property and sales tax collections off of estimated expenses of around $155,000. Now, what are those? Those are maintenance costs. So what we did was we took the current maintenance budgets for all of our public works departments and any other operational departments that may service this and divided it by the estimated add of the number of buildings and population and just took that. So it's not a greater level of service or greater level of maintenance. It is simply what we currently provide in the budget for the rest of the city, and that is how all of these expenses actually come about. On sanitation, we have the addition of an employee, and in one-time expenses, the addition of a packer to serve that community, because that would trip us over the need to add an additional route. Stormwater are recurring expenses versus recurring revenues. You will note that is in the red, and that does not take into account the proposed rate increase that you will see in the recommended budget shortly in the month of May and June. Water management has recurring revenues and then offsetting expenses, and then of course hotel motel generates the room key, the occupancy tax estimates. The one-time revenues are of course much greater because it is the impact fees paid. However, we've noted that the 16 million roughly in total one-time fees, over $11 million could be part of offset agreements. So what we've tried to provide to you is what is the net amount of money one time that the city would receive sort of free and clear. And again, offset agreements are what they are. If they improve and they seek the money back, then of course we repay it. If not, and it's left up to us, then there will be more expenses, but we would have the revenues with which to be able to pay for them. One other item I'll note that is not part of this calculator that a few of you mentioned, we have met with Williamson County Schools regarding the impacts of education, not just on this development, but writ large throughout the community and as we look into annexation areas. And what we heard from them was quite simply, it all depends. It all depends upon where the capacity currently is on whether or not they would need to add additional school buildings or teachers, classrooms, bus routes, etc. So that is not part of this calculator in retrospect, but we do know that depending upon whether development occurs in the west, southwest, east, southeast, that will determine the answer of what the impacts on schools will be, and we will work to try to get that in future uses of the calculator.
I think we are ready to hear if the development team wants to give their perspective. We want to hear their voice on this as well.
Oh, sure, you want me to do that? I'm Craig Hoover, one of the developers of Armistead. I'm here with Phil Hunt, he's with IDD Consultant. These are all, you know us all, but just for the record. Yeah, there we go. I wasn't really prepared to give the presentation, but I will. It's in the packet, and you guys, can go through it. But I will. You guys have seen all this. You voted on it. You know what our development plan is. Obviously, I think the first item on tonight's agenda was apropos, I think. Obviously what we're trying to do is to bring a range of housing types to the market and in an exceptional place and consolidate it in a sort of a higher density yet conservation through density effort. And that's why we're preserving all the open space. We're using it as productive agriculture, and we're using that agriculture to not only create a place, but also feed the community within and the community without. And so, we're obviously very proud of what we've done here to create this innovative agrihood, and we feel pretty strongly that if given the opportunity to realize its full potential, this will be a signature development for not just Franklin, but for the entire Southeast. And Franklin will be really proud to have it within its borders. So I'll go through all this. You guys have seen this a ton, but I'll just kind of go through sort of the mechanism of what we're trying to do. Obviously, diversity of housing types, legacy of farming, cradle to grave living. I think all of that was seen as a need. What we talked about, and of course, we talked about the public art, all the community amenities everything is open to the public. This is not a gated community. This is a community that has a fully open gate throughout. You can walk right through the neighborhood, right through mid-block pathways. It is open to the public. We believe in connectivity. This will be a local food and agricultural hub. Of course, we'll have 30 small businesses or so that will be able to operate, and we will be a hub for innovative food uses. We'll be able to distribute and aggregate farmer produce from, like I said, within and without the community. So we're going to do all this. And we're going to go through all this. We're going to have all the great stuff in the farm, and this is the historic farm. This is sort of a redevelopment. May I contend that there's the family farm this has been here since 1887, and these buildings have been constructed and degraded over time, and we're going to reimagine them as public gathering spaces and things that contribute to the community, not just the residents but the entire community. Obviously, that's a pretty robust pedestrian circulation. All those little colored things you see are how people can walk. That's not how people drive. This is the economic impact. I think we can see what we're going to see there. And then this. You guys stop me if this is helpful. If not helpful, I should say. But this is what will be financed by the IDD, right? Everything you see in green on this sheet here, right? So these are this is phase one. the public roads, the off-site road improvements, and all the utilities underneath. So these are the public right-of-way that'll be funded by the IDD. So everything else that I described is funded by, is funded by private equity or debt that we bring to the table. This is the infrastructure opinion of cost. This is for the entire thing. This is not just the phase one, but this is around 54 million. I think this is about 6 months old, so it might have been updated since, but it's directionally right. And this is all the stuff that we are going to finance without not using the IDD. Private roads and alleys, you can read, but all this stuff is stuff that is not necessarily funded by the improvement district financing. So this slide is really meant to just sort of explain what the impact is to the homeowner. I know a lot of people are concerned that this is sort of a hidden tax and all this stuff, but so what I've done here is how we're going to do this bond methodology is if and when we get 2-to-1 value to lien. So let's just do a $300,000 lot valuation, right? So in that $300,000 lot, we will have $150,000 of bond financing. So we will have to pay that back. That is collateralized by that lot, right? So that will place $25,000 in A bonds, we'll call them A bonds, and then $125,000 in B bonds. When we sell the lot for $300,000 to a builder, to a homeowner, whoever it is, then we will pay back the B bond, right? We will keep $175,000 to pay for all the other stuff that we said that is not IDD fundable, and then a home will be built on that, and that home will be just generally 20% is the land cost, so a $1.5 million home. Annual property tax on that about $9,000. So if you kind of go through here, or if you go through here and say, and then there's a $25,000 A bond which rides with the property, and that is a 5.5% to 6%, maybe 6.5%, depending on where interest rates land, 30-year mortgage or 30-year note on that lot. And Phil, if I say anything wrong, just kick me. All right. So basically, the homeowner is financing $25,000 now, or the builder is financing $25,000 over 30 years. So the monthly impact on your mortgage is $158 a month on a total expenses of whatever that is, $8,000. So that's a monthly increase in 2%. If we were to and the other one on the other side is if we were to take $50,000, then that's an increase of less than 4%. So the actual cost to the homeowner, on a monthly basis is, believe me, I realize we live in Franklin, and we learned a lot about our how inflated our costs and expenses are, but it's pretty small. And of the phase one, we're going after about somewhere between $20 and $22 million worth of IDD funds. That's less than half of the overall development cost. So, in a couple of ways that can go away. The builder who buys the house can say, you know what? I don't want to confuse my buyer with a $25,000 IDD. I'm just going to pay you an extra $25,000 for the lot, right? So this $25,000 is either going to get financed by a mortgage, and it's going to be an increase in the house, or it's going to ride with the property. So realistically, this is not an extra expense that other. I feel like I'm just selling you on IDD. I don't want to do that. What I really want to say is that this is a tool for developers like us, which are not the big time private equity developer guys. This is Brian Wright and I, who have partnered with the family who's owned this property for 150 years to develop this property. This is a tool. It is not a gift. We still have to pay interest on this money, but what we're able to do is deliver a community of extraordinary public benefit, and it's all up front, right? Our total if I just said what is the whole development cost of this in all phases is probably close to $90 to $100 million, and phase one is 60, right? So that's a big upfront, and that's just one phase, which is less than 40% of the inventory. So I think the rest is this is how we're going to do it. In this blue area, that's a major improvement area. So this will be, it's valued a little bit differently, but 2 to 1 gets $4.9 million. The phase one is in purple here. Used to be a different color, but now it's purple. That's the value of $38 million. We'll get 19.8, but we'll actually be able to use 14.8. And then we're going to take the lower section and how we've sort of devised this, and that is not going to be encumbered by the IDD, or we're not going to use it as collateral. That's what will be our collateral for the bank. And so that's what the bank will loan against to allow us to develop the property. So as you can see, that's the sort of the philosophy here. And you can see here. And all this stuff that has already been in the notice of intent. But I mean, really, I wanted to be here obviously because this is important to us, and this is important to our capital stack, and to be able to develop it the way we want to develop it without bringing in, equity from outside the area to be able to do it. This is an enabling tool, and so we're happy to be your guinea pig here. We're going to be a guinea pig in a lot of ways for a lot of communities across the country, in fact, about how we try and do this. And we are so fortunate to be in Franklin with all of those demographic, advantages that we reviewed earlier today in the work session, to be able to have an opportunity to create a prototype for what we believe will be the future of greenfield development, responsible greenfield development. So having said that, please, fire away.
Any questions? Alderman Berg.
Is there any plans to connect Armistead for pedestrians to the commercial at West Haven?
Yes, there's a light, an omnidirectional light with a crosswalk.
That's it? One place? 2 places?
Well, that's pretty much the most logical place to do it.
There's 2 lights, one at MacHatcher, one at the...
Yes, there's a crosswalk
one
over there as well, but that MacHatcher light is not really close to any commercial.
Yeah.
The commercial.
It's way
can
down.
You see my thing?
It'd be down at Old Charlotte Pike.
Is right here and right here, and so there's the connection. We explored a tunnel. That was expensive.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what about a tunnel?
Yeah, we would be willing to talk about a tunnel if perhaps that could be a nice public-private partnership that we could discuss.
It's a lot of activity there that you're asking for. It's just way too much activity to have people crossing the road all the time. And you've got children, you've got amenities.
Mm-hmm.
This is something we need to look at. I would think it's an important thing to take a look at. Are you doing any other turn lanes off of 96?
Yes, we're widening 96 all the way, about a couple thousand feet, and we're putting new eastbound turn lanes, new westbound turn lanes. We're implementing the TIS as recommended. Mm-hmm.
Well, once you look at something about, we've got to solve a problem here. We talk about trails and everything, that's great, but walkability, we have a lot of commercial across the street. And then you'll have amenities that those people will want to access too. And,
God willing.
And we've got to make a priority for the pedestrian safety out there.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. This is non-negotiable to me.
And I agree.
I think we have to solve that problem.
Yeah. I would love to do a tunnel, and hopefully we'll program the lights in such a way that we've got that it's extremely safe and and conducive for lots of neighborhood traffic.
Vice Mayor.
I think that's a good example of something, if we'd have looked at it in the development plan, that
Yeah.
kind of, as we're guinea pigging this, that could have been, I would think would qualify for the additional connectivity to the surrounding, areas that there's a ton of people in West Haven that we're gonna wanna get across there. And that is the kind of thing, again, that I think this is gonna be good for getting that we just wouldn't get otherwise, because it is expensive. But it would be useful, and it would be, a lot of people are gonna get in their cars to go from West Haven to this. That maybe with a golf cart tunnel, they would take the golf cart. Well, I don't know, that's not maybe illegal. Is it? Okay, all right, it can work. It
You
can
guys
work.
make the laws.
I don't know, there's a lot of electric vehicle laws right now. I'm
Yeah,
trying
that's
to
right.
wrap my head around
Yeah.
new laws, but the point is, I think that is something that I think food for thought.
I agree, Alderman, just real quick, let me respond to that. So one of the things that we talked about with staff as we were going through this thing is like, well, hey, what if you guys did, if you guys added this or put in a new pump station or added another, and I think the misconception is that this money is free, is that it's not that it's a gift that enables us to build cheaper. And the truth is that ostensibly this is 7.5% money for us, right? And so for us to borrow money at an institutional rate, we're looking at maybe 8.5%, and if we get a really good guarantor, maybe back to 7.5%, which is what we will be able to borrow at market rate. So for us to go adding another, $500,000, $2 million worth of expenses in order to get the IDD, it wouldn't be financially. It wouldn't pencil, right? Because we would just go borrow the money from the bank, right? Or have a guarantor that would come in and help us do that. So that's the I think it requires a shift in thinking, is that this is a gift to developers, and we can maybe extract more. Now, everything we talked about earlier in terms of density bonuses, in terms of hey, if you guys get this, we can give you an IDD and you can get an extra 25 units or something like that, or we'll reduce your parking minimums or all the other things. Like, so those are ways that we can increase the housing supply and we can make housing more affordable, and we can do it, and we can utilize the IDD to incentivize that stuff. But just to tack on another $250,000 of expense that wouldn't ordinarily be there, that doesn't add value to the or doesn't really contribute to the bottom line, makes the IDD less viable as a financing.
So
tool.
let me step in here, because I think then this $54 million in total CIP cost, and maybe your professional can or consultant can help me understand this, but $54,218,000 that is in this, that is going to be paid back by, except for your cost, your carrying cost, paid back by the sale of the lot, which is sold to the home builder, which the home builder is going to put that lot cost in the cost of the house. Okay, so that's paid off, or that's included in that final sale price. And then the other part, what's remaining, looks to be these A bonds that they're paying off. So it's in the mortgage. This money is in the mortgage, or it's in the IDD bill.
Yeah, correct.
And this is financing that 54 million effectively, or just differently, until the sale price. But either way, the property owner is paying this.
That's correct.
And I think that's important for us to remember. I also think it's important for us to remember that while you might not, want to go, but that makes a big difference in getting things up off the ground. So it's not a gift per se, But if it wasn't a big deal, you wouldn't have been here 5, 10 times and been the first guinea pig. So don't try to make it like it's not.
Well, here's the difference. Like, we could do this without the IDD.
Yeah.
What it would require, because we would have, you know, the banks to, you know, and different lenders to come in, is it might cost us a little more. And we would have to do it at a much slower pace, right? We would have to go in and say, all right, let's just, you know, let's dip our toe into the agri-hood world, and then start to do it. So this enables us to deliver the goods on day one, or at least, you know, more than we would ordinarily be able to do it. So I don't want to say that this isn't a benefit to us.
Sure,
it absolutely is, but a financial benefit, it might not be, right? It's a placemaking benefit.
We could debate that.
Yeah.
But that's
debatable.
Doing something faster and getting product to market quicker is certainly not a bad thing for the developer.
It is not.
So that's fine. We can agree on that. Look, I think my only comments again on this side, and I want to hear what everybody else says. This is a hard one because it's already gone through. I respect the fact that staff went through and did this analysis, and I don't disagree. Frankly, I don't disagree with the credit that was given. I think that was I think that's what I would like to see staff do the same way for anyone else who comes before us. And we've always said that that's not the hard and fast. I think the stuff you did get credit for, you get a lot of credit for. In my mind, the section that you got full credit on, like that is kind of the thing about this that is unique and special. And so I think if we had this before you went through, I think you probably would have ended up meeting the other two criteria, because we would have coached that through if that was important. And it may not have been a tunnel, it may have been something else. Yeah. But so this one I do feel inclined to support, because the one section you did get all the credit for is significant. But this is the first one, and I reserve the right to change my mind if staff or other aldermen bring up forward other concerns that I haven't thought of, because this is all brand new.
I will say that you know, I think it's a fair characterization that the staff gave in terms of where we didn't get credit. The attainable housing part, we'll see. You know, I mean, look, I mean, we're providing, you know, we're selling these. We've got 350 some odd multifamily units, right, of varying sizes, and we've got tiny homes, and we've got townhomes, and you know, one person's attainable is another person's, you know, or trash is treasure. What you know what I'm trying to say? Like it's relative, right? And we're in Franklin, and so yes, we may not meet the 90% or the 80% of median income threshold there, but it's a housing stock that we just don't have, and that we need to have. And one of the things that's not in here, that because we can't, because it's private property, but we are incentivizing. We are giving people their own sort of lot level density bonuses as part of our pattern book. If you put an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, on your property, then you get expedited review. You get different get sort of different benefits from a design review process. That doesn't show up on the housing on the housing attainability, because it's not a fee simple property that shows up like that. So while I agree that we're not doing affordable housing here.
Mm-hmm. Alderman Brown.
Thank you. Well, a few things. First of all, I do want to say to staff, because I was really concerned about how the evaluation would go, and I thought you did fantastic. It was great. It was fair. I do agree. I think you nailed it. And if that's the way that we're going to do these going forward, no concerns here. I think that will be great. It is hard because it is something that has already come through. It is so off the charts on the exceptional design part. It is something that we really do want. We don't have this in our community. I wish everybody would do charrettes. I wish everybody would do this kind of development. And so I want it to happen, and I want it to happen the way we want it, and we envision it happening. And I don't want to have to toe dip. I don't want to go slow. I will say the other one piece I will say that is not one of the 4 criteria, but that is, I have consistently said that I wanted the IDD for, is so that the local smaller developer and the small family farm can do this kind of stuff. I would argue, I think the shorts, I think y'all are probably leaving money on the table because you're not just packing this full like a West Haven.
There's no doubt.
And so I do think there's something happening here at Armistead that could have been something very different. In fact, I'm sure, I have no doubt that the shorts probably have people knocking on the doors on a regular basis wanting to build twice as much of what you're offering to put on this property. And so I applaud them, and I'm grateful for them and you that you're not doing that. And so for that reason, I think IDD, that's where I want IDD to work the most. I don't want to give it to the big, folks that are coming into town who want to build something. That to me is the wrong application. You're the right folks to be using this. This is the right development. Having said all that, you and I have talked about, the housing stock. You brought up the study that we saw in the beginning. You're right. You are answering some of that research. You're answering some of that smaller units, the tiny homes, the single bedrooms, the 1 and 2 bedrooms, and all that, which is needed and important. The only challenge is that the market rates of those are not anywhere near where that study is actually coming in at. I don't think, in my mind, I'm not thinking that Armistead needs to be the attainable housing development. It's not going to be that, but it's going to be so exceptional that everybody's going to want to be moving into this place. I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't mind living there.
Call me.
No.
That's joking.
But I'm pretty happy where I am. But I'm just saying, I mean, it's going to be an exceptional place. And I think that's going to drive the market in a place that's going to actually, I don't care if it's a tiny home or a 1 or 2 bedroom, I think the market rates on this place they're just going to be elevated just because everybody's going to want to be a part of that community. And so my concern is, even the smaller units, we had this conversation with Middle 8. I think the only reason why Middle 8 really made it through this board, quite frankly, was because they were bringing us a housing stock that in a smaller unit that we didn't have. If we didn't have that, I don't know that it would have made it. I love the smaller units, but if they're not going to be anywhere close to a market that people can afford, then we're not really addressing it. I don't think it's hundreds of units. I don't think it's 20%. I would love to see you, though, take a serious look at some of those smaller units. I'm not even saying the big single-family homes. But on top of the exceptional design, is there a small carve-out of some of these 30 units or whatever that you could say, you know what, I think there's a cap on some of these that we could place to be a good steward of what we're hearing? I mean, this is a major challenge for us here. And I don't think it's going to kill the development to put a portion of those smaller units and put some sort of a threshold on them so that we can stay within there. I can't imagine that in the context of what this can offer, it's going to kill the underwriting of what you're trying to do. I don't, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm right about that. I would love to see you evaluate some of those smaller units and say, I think there's not just, hey, we'll wait and see, but more of a, hey, I think there's a handful of these, or there's a dozen of these or so that we think we could apply that for.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we were the builder, then if we were the person delivering the units, then that's the conversation that we would need to have with the people that are actually going vertical. For us to, we'll be completely open book as we'll have to be, obviously, because of the IDD. It's tight. This development does not make money for the next 5 years, right? And that's assuming an 8 to 9 year build out. Okay, so no one's making money here on this for 5 years. So I certainly hope and that there's attainable housing that becomes a part of this. One of the things that we do have is the ability to do some farmhand housing from an agricultural use, and that's workforce for certain. The other thing that I think is important to remember, that this is also good muscle memory for developments in Franklin. It's like just showing that a range of housing that is co-located can work well and function well means that maybe you don't have to invest $50 million in your phase 1 to create a development that has a range of housing types, some of which are attainable. Because I think one of the things that one of the biggest barriers to NIMBYism in general is that it will change the character of our neighborhood, right? If we can't allow a duplex here or a quadplex there and all this, so the density concessions that we're trying to get, but if we can actually walk to a community where we see that in action and see it happening, even if it's more expensive because of all the investment and the coolness of the place and all that kind of stuff, if we see it happen, then I think it will spur other developers to say, you know what, we can use a mix of housing types in a development and do it at a lower cost per square foot because, and I think maybe some of the neighbors will be like, you know what, it's not so bad to have a young couple, in a different stage of life living near us. It kind of creates a little bit more diversity. And as you've heard me say, diversity is the key to every ecosystem.
Nobody else? I've always been a fan of the Armstead development. I think it's great. Saying that attainable housing, we'll see, that's a no-go for me. I don't know why we would do an IDD. I just don't see any advantage for us to do that. So that's just my personal opinion based on what I've heard tonight. I was hoping that we would see something that would encourage us to go ahead and be a little more excited about doing an IDD for this. But I don't think you've brought anything that creates an excitement for us to do the IDD. I think it's our tool. It's not your tool.
For sure.
So that's my thought. So we'll keep moving on if we could. Item 8 is that okay with everybody to keep moving?
Just real quick, just respond to that. And I apologize. I did not come here today to sell Armistead on the IDD. And like I said, I was not prepared to give a presentation. This was hey, let's look at the notice of intent. Let's look at the application of the policy and see how it works, how it fits with us. So, I certainly apologize to this board if I wasn't. Like I said, we're the guinea pig. We want you guys to read what we've put forward and to evaluate against it. I'm certainly, like I said, the IDD is important to us because for the capital stack and trying to keep it all local. But for certain, it is. We're going to go forward, and there are ways to do it without it. But we hope this board will ultimately, when we do get a chance to defend it, we will.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate you being the guinea pig. And I think it's important for us as we learn how to work with this IDD and we see other projects come in, recognize that you're kind of jumping on the train while it's moving. But that's okay. You're open to that, and we appreciate it. I think certainly the staff completed a fair assessment of our 4 criteria. And I was hoping when I was looking and preparing for tonight, I was hoping you would come and say, actually, staff missed on this point, and we're doing this, and they should have scored us here differently.
Oh, I can do that.
No. I think the message I'm hoping that you and others in the room perhaps that are looking at asking for the IDD tool is to hear that just qualifying for one of the criteria is not going to at least move most of us on this board to allow that tool to be utilized. And so as you're thinking about building this request, think about how you can qualify for more than one, not all, but more than one criteria, and be concrete in it. And so I hope this is an instructive session for you to maybe go away and think like, how could we maybe be more definitive in some of the attainable housing criteria? That's something obviously that's important to us. How could we help staff become more clear in what enhancements to public infrastructure beyond just the impact fees, right? You're going to have to build the additional turn lanes and decel lanes, and all that is because of the development and the impact that the development will have on that road. But what could go above and beyond, and how could the IDD help you bring that sooner in the development instead of us waiting until year 8, 9, or 10 to get some of these once the funds become available if it were developed without the IDD. And so I appreciate you coming and going through this journey with us, and I hope that others are listening closely as you think about asking for access to this tool. And to be quite clear, I don't have any misconception that this is a gift to you. I know that it is a tool that you can use, and for the benefit of that community and the other community members that are going to be utilizing what I think is a really interesting and unique project, and I look forward to it coming online. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm kind of confused. I'm sorry.
Sure. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I'm a bit confused on what the next steps are in general. I don't know if maybe everyone else is like enlightened on what is going to happen next. I agree with you, Alderman Caesar, that I would have liked to hear some of those things, since this is kind of the sandbox in some regards, and since staff has heard some of this feedback, including all of ours. I wonder if the next step might be, and also respecting the fact that doing what you just asked would require a complete resubmittal of the PUD to start to do a lot of these things. I mean, to go in and do a lot of, I don't know, maybe not. And that's what I think would come back.
Depends, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are the depends things that I think if we can get there. I think there's still another meeting that happens with the group.
Yeah, you've not hit the formal part. This is sort of a bonus, and we thank you for playing along with us here. But you are able to have you'll have by the law, the framework and the law, and in our policy, there will be a public hearing. I don't think that clock is officially started because we're not a host municipality yet. But once we are and we have essentially an application to consider, we have to hold a public hearing with us within, I think, 60 days. And that is the point at which this gets more formal. So this is a chance to take that feedback, look at it, see if there's some ways that we look at either your perspective on it as policymakers, the applicant's decisions or choices or ask on this, and if we've interpreted this correctly from a staff review standpoint to apply your policy. So I think that's where that comes to a more formal point, and you're making a decision based on what's in front of you. It may be exactly what you have today. It may be something slightly different, or there could be something that's contingent upon additional work that happens. I don't know. We'd have to think that through. This is new.
Right.
But you've not done the formal part. That comes once we're established and we've implemented what is now going to be an ordinance that reflects your policy.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Clear.
Because we will officially submit. This was an example notice of intent, and all this kind of stuff. We will officially submit, and we will take the feedback that we get from staff and from up here in the board, and the mayor, and sort of reevaluate that, and perhaps be a little bit more rhetorical in our description of some of the benefits that we're bringing, given this feedback. And so that's what I was hoping we would accomplish today.
Thank you. Item 8 is Resolution 2026-31, a resolution for the City of Franklin Closed Employees Pension Plan providing cost of living adjustment to the monthly benefit retired recipients effective July 2026.
We're applying your policy, basically. Christine may want to give you a quick overview.
Yes, and applying the cost of living policy for the closed pension plan, that is a increase of 2.5%. That would be recommended for the board to consider. It would be applied in July. And so we would be asking you at the next meeting to consider approval of the resolution, because we do have to do manual calculations and notify retirees of that increase.
Okay. Item 9 is ordinance 2025-54, an ordinance to rezone 202.60 acres to revise the Hillside Hillcrest Overlay HAO district boundaries for the property located south of McHatcher Memorial Parkway, east of Franklin Road at 354 Franklin Road. Established public hearing on May the 12th, 2026. Joey?
Yes, hello. I just came back to address some of the comments and concerns that were raised at the last BOMA meeting, specifically about the HHO and the SCO overlays districts that we have throughout the city. Just to give you some background, the Hillside Hillcrest overlay was established in 2008. After a multi-year study to create such a layover or overlay zoning district. So we didn't just drive around and go, oh, that looks nice, let's put that on the map. It's actually based on contour lines, elevation points, steep slopes, analysis, and hillside view shed analysis, and an inventory of preserved mature tree canopy that all went into establishing the HHO line, not just in the city, but actually in the entire urban growth boundary. So as more land came into the city, those lines would already be established. And we take the HHO extremely seriously. I think the amount of request that we've received to modify it has been not recommended by staff, so we do take that very seriously. And we have worked with the applicant several times for this specific property to modify the HHO request. I know there was a lot of attention to the eastern portion at the where Cool Springs Boulevard dead ends to currently dead ends to Mac Hatcher. Oh, here we go. Let me pull that up while I'm talking. So I did want to point out in this area there is already an easement for the Mallory Valley water line. Unfortunately, couldn't get an exhibit ready in time for this meeting, but that was taken into consideration with the Envision Franklin Conservation Line amendment that pre-led this formal request to revise the HHO. So because of that existing easement, some of the trees have already been removed, and that the new line kind of encompasses the existing current tree canopy. So for this entire property, both on Mac Hatcher and Franklin Road, there's also the scenic corridor overlay that establishes a 150-foot setback from both of those major roads. So really, even with the modified HHO line, there is very little developable area on that side of, or in that portion of the property. And just as a general reminder, it's currently a state residential, so right now it only would allow for residential single-family lots of a minimum of 2 acres in size. So anything else other than that would require a rezoning that would come to the board for review and consideration. Any more than one additional residential lot would also require a preliminary plat, which just with current zoning, which would require public notifications and consideration by our planning commission. So those are kind of the main points I wanted to bring up, and happy to answer any questions you have for this specific rezoning request.
And go ahead, Alderman Potts, and then I do have one public speaker. I have the applicant.
So I do have a question on this one. The areas we can see where the red line is going to the blue line, which is current, you had mentioned that there was an easement there and that trees had been removed. They were removed due to a line being put underground. Is that what?
I don't have the specifics. I know it was discussed with the conservation plan amendment that I think there had been some clearing, and the applicant may have some more information about that. But it's my understanding that some were trees removed for that purpose some time ago, and that is why the current HHO line captures the current tree canopy.
Okay. And so my question is if those trees hadn't been removed, would there have been any change in the percentage of grade to that area?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
All right. Alderman Brown?
Those are questions probably best served by the applicant. In general, this particular area that was amended through the Envision Franklin amendment process, we considered all the items that the applicant submitted as kind of rationale for their requests that are outlined through the Envision Franklin plan. And due to the existing conditions, staff recommended that the line be amended in this location, along with the location facing or towards Franklin Road. There was another area facing Mac Hatcher that staff did not recommend be amended, and that has been taken out of this request as it was not amended in Envision Franklin. But I do believe the applicant's here tonight and can probably answer those specific questions and has a better history of what's been done on the site.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Alderman Brown, then I'll have the applicant come up after that.
I'm sorry. So the space that's there on Cool Springs Boulevard and Mac Hatcher, that space would allow for a lot or two if that line was moved?
So, and I might try and see if I can pull up the other map. So with this, this exhibit here does not have the scenic corridor overlay currently. So if we were to add that on there, it would reduce the amount of developable space to be very little.
Yeah, I'm just I'm actually trying to be very specific because I was under the impression there would not be room to put even a single-family home on a 2-acre lot. But if, so do we think there is or isn't room to do that if you did the scenic overlay?
I don't think there is. I mean,
Okay.
I haven't done the specific math or any of the calculations, but I don't think there is.
Okay. 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 It would be, I just, I mean, my hesitation on moving that line at all has been, hey, could somebody put a house there? I've been okay with it because I didn't think you could. So if there's any hesitation that, hey, somebody could potentially put something there, I don't want to do that, right? So.
I think between now and the public hearing, which is in a couple of weeks, we can work with the applicant to have that provided. Greg is here if the board has any specific questions for him, but we can work together to provide that prior to the next public hearing.
Because to be clear, I would not move that line if I thought there was going to be something built there. I don't care if it was a house or a office building. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gamble, it's your turn.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Greg Gamble, and landscape architect representing the applicant and the property owner. We have been working with staff for just over 3.5 years because we went on this property and asked a surveyor to identify where the existing hillside overlay line is. And I've got a board here, but it shows in areas where the HHO goes out and includes an existing barn that's on the property that goes out across a farm field. The intent behind our conversations with staff was summarized in the Envision Franklin memorandum that was put together by staff that says the proposed adjustments to the conservation boundaries have been carefully reviewed and adjusted to preserve the important topography and visual features of the property. The applicant's approach maintains the historic landscape and avoids unnecessary encroachment into the sensitive terrain. What we're trying to do is capture the spirit of what the HHO was intended to do, which is to protect the hilltop. This area over here, Alderman Potts, that you asked about just a little bit ago, the HHO line does not follow the 150-foot scenic corridor along Mac Hatcher. It does not follow the Mac Hatcher right-of-way. In here are 25% slopes, but there are also some 14% slopes that are outside of that. In the HHO buffer, all 14% slopes and greater are protected. We don't know why, but that was determined at some point in time. This line here goes through the tree line. We didn't argue that. There's no developable potential over on that side. But again, as we're looking at coming in off of Cool Springs Boulevard, there's an area here that might be a trailhead for the community to use to access the hilltop. We know that there's going to be a trailhead over on the south side, which is great. It's wonderful. We need trailheads. We need access to this historic resource. I don't have a plan that shows anything here right now. This white line, that dashed line, that's the 150-foot scenic corridor buffer. For those, this is the 150-foot corridor buffer. There is a little bit of area here between the 150-foot and the tree line. I haven't measured it. If this is 150 feet, maybe that's 100. In the regulations, when you have in the zoning ordinance about these half-acre lots, there's a certain front setback, there's a certain rear setback. Yeah, I may not be able to put a house there. But to have an opportunity for it to maybe be a trailhead, I don't know. We're not proposing to you a development today. We're simply trying to right-size the HHO on this property. That's simply it. And Amy asked me to be available to answer any questions that you may have, so wanted to make sure I was here tonight for the work session to do that. Thank you.
Potts.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So, as you take a look at this, I really don't, I have great concerns about anything being built here. So I really want to understand the total size of this, for lack of better words, lot, or this area of land.
Is it specifically about the area coming in off of Mac Hatcher Parkway?
It is. It's just right there where your red line is. And
okay, that's
between the
helpful.
red
I
line
can bring
and the
that
blue
exhibit
line.
next time we meet. Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. That's where it is. This is, and I hear what you said about the encroachment for sensitive terrain, but for me, this is that sensitive terrain, but it's also this view shed.
Okay.
And what's been presented on the west side because I've seen it, I've driven it, I've been out there.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about the line going through the barn or those other things. That makes sense to me, but the proximity of the closeness to the slope of Roper's Knob with where the traffic flow intersects right there at Cool Springs and Mackhatcher, I'm all for a trailhead. I think that something that gives residents that opportunity to park and walk to that, I think that's something the city should be providing. I've got concern about moving it now and not knowing what could go there.
Let me give you an analysis on that then. We can look at lots and building pads and we can do more analysis on that. That's no problem.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor, quickly.
Could we change the hillside overlay and leave the 550 buffer or the buffer like it is now?
It's not moving.
The buffer's moving in this map.
Yeah, so actually the way we have done the rezoning, we don't remap the buffer. We only remap the HHO. We don't remap the 500 foot because it's already a static zoning boundary
Like from the line?
from the existing line. So we would not change that line, the buffer line,
So the buffer
with this
stays.
request. The buffer stays where it is today.
So that turquoise buffer would stay because the
Yes.
purple is showing proposed 500 HHO buffer. Would we need to remove that?
Yeah, we could get an updated exhibit. We don't actually change that line, and the ordinance, we'll look back at it, but I believe it's only written to change the HHO line. So I can look back at that.
Okay, thank you.
So the exhibit may just not match up with the ordinance itself, so we could get a new exhibit.
All right, thanks.
Last item is pedestrian crosswalk at Mackhatcher and South Royal Oaks.
So we're circling back on this from last meeting. We had some discussion about what would it look like to add this. Paul in engineering had an opportunity to look at those numbers and give you a better sense. So Paul, summarize it for folks.
So just a reminder, TDOT's already bid out their 1.8 million resurfacing project. They're moving forward. They've scheduled a pre-construction meeting. We're simply trying to catch up on the side streets. Staff envision this initially as more of a short-term transportation improvement, knowing in 2032, Mackhatcher will start, at least on TDOT's books. Hopefully we can start it sooner. At that point in time, we had planned to incorporate all the pedestrian connectivity that we do on all of our projects. Looking at it very high level, there's 2 cabinets that need to be moved. We'd have to do some rewiring. We are estimating about $300,000 to $400,000, and that's a conservative estimate, is what it would take to put pedestrian crossings at 2 or 3 of the crossings of the roadway to connect the YMCA with the residents on the other side of Mackhatcher. The majority of that would be throwaway, however, it can be incorporated. We are currently out the bid. I'm not proposing to slow that bid down because we really don't have time. What we would do is look at change ordering it in, or working with our street department's annual contractor to do that, or a separate bid coming back and modifying it. So we're happy to do whatever it is the board would like to do. It's 100% up to y'all. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
But that cost range is 300 to 400,000 to do the improvement, bottom line,
I think what
pretty much.
what has just been said, though, is what needs to be. You know, I mean, we're in such a great situation there than we've ever been in.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. I would ask, as we look to engineer this and to find out the cost, if you're looking at the Google map, it's 2 crosswalks, one that goes from the YMCA side to the other side, which is Dr. Kemp's side, and then from Dr. Kemp's corner across to the Academy of Forest Crossing. So it's
Correct.
You're only doing 2 pedestrian crosswalks.
I misspoke. It is 2, is the 3 to 400,000.
Okay.
Not 3, it's 2 is all we could do. The third one's not possible because we got that hot right turn. It just wouldn't be feasible and it would significantly delay traffic.
And this is going to be ADA compliant as far as the ramps go on each end of the 2 sections?
Yes, if we're directed to do it, we will make it ADA compliant.
Okay.
Alderman Brown.
What is the, I mean, I know we've looked at crosswalks and we've looked at, oh, I'm sorry, no, go, I'm sorry.
Okay. Go ahead. No, I was not talking to you. I was trying to get the mayor's attention. I think this is necessary. I've received several emails from individuals as well as a couple of groups that want to make this connectivity. I understand the potential for throwaway over the course of 6 to 8 years at $300,000 or $400,000. We won't have the figure until you bring it back to us, but that's going to take us out to at least 2032 for this, and the opportunity to signalize this now as the improvements, whether the project occurs with after TDOT does it or whatever that window is, I think this is a needed improvement for connectivity, because you can look at Royal Oaks from Forest Crossings all the way down from some of the other neighborhoods that have reached out to us. I'm talking about kids who are going to the YMCA, these other things. The last thing I want to have is a safety issue of kids trying to get over there to the YMCA or to Church of the City or anywhere else. That's the reason why I'm pushing for this right now.
Alderman Caesar. Oh, Alderman Brown, and then I've got Alderman Caesar.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't realize yours. Just educate me a minute. I know we've looked at pedestrian crossings and signals and stuff like that for, different neighborhoods and stuff, and the cost is significantly less. So what makes this cost so much more than when we were looking at Fieldstone Parkway or something like that? What makes this so expensive? And is it the mechanism of actually activating the signals? Could we do an automatic, it's an on and off kind of a thing with the light?
It's really, when you start touching it, there's two cabinets out there. There's a switch, there's an air conditioning cabinet. So when we move the cabinet, essentially we're going to upgrade all of that equipment and computer hardware, and then we have to rewire the whole thing. I want to say Donaldson Creek was around $800,000 to just signalize that, and that's fully upgraded, ramps, everything. It looks great now. So conservatively, we're saying $300 to $400. Truly, if you want a cost, we need to do the engineering.
Yeah.
We need to get a price from a contractor, and we would need to bring it back. I'm trying to give you the upper end of it, to be honest. I don't want to come back and ask for more.
I get it.
But it's touching the cabinet is what scares me, and then the scope creep of, well, we might as well do this. We have to add a culvert. We got to add ramps, and just without the engineering being done, it's hard to estimate that.
Alderman Caesar.
I would just say I think this is a worthy investment for us to do the work, to get the engineering costs so that we can make a real decision with real money. If it's $300,000, I think it signals something to our greater community that connectivity is important in road projects, even if they're going to disappear in 7 or 8 years. I'd like to think, and maybe this is cognitive bias because we've been talking about it, I drive Royal Oaks and Mac Hatcher on a very regular basis. I can't remember, since we talked about it, Paul, being at that intersection and not seeing somebody waiting to cross or running across. I saw an older gentleman run across the other day, and I was hoping as he went across the different truck humps that exist in Mac Hatcher, he didn't catch a tow and go down. He didn't, thankfully, but it was because he didn't have a protected way to get across. The lights had changed, but he wasn't sure when they were going to turn back. I don't think that's the safest way for us to be building, even if it's a TDOT funded project. I think we should do the engineering, get us a real cost. But even if this comes back at 300 or 400, I'm going to support it because I think it demonstrates to the community that we are building with walkability, bikeability in mind, and I think it's something we should always be doing. So, thank you, Mayor.
Just to throw it out, and I'm not trying to push you one way or the other, the engineering is relatively small cost, $15,000. It's something we could easily do and establish pricing and bring it back if you're split on the subject, but it's 100% however you want to handle it.
We're probably split. Are you comfortable enough for us to administratively get the engineering done and give you a more refined number? At least a step at a time. Is that okay? Okay, we'll do that.
We can do that. Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned, and we'll be back in about 10.